She married the billionaire CEO for love, then found out he was her son's biological father. "I have a son you've never told me about." The words hung in the air between them, sharp as broken glass. Rowan's face drained of color as she stared at the man she'd once loved, the man who now stood before her after 12 long years. "How did you find out?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cafe's ambient noise. Beckett Montgomery slid a DNA test result across the table, his amber eyes the same eyes their son had inherited never leaving her face. "You had no right," she hissed, tears threatening to spill. "And you had no right to keep him from me for 12 years?" He countered, his voice controlled but trembling with emotion. 12 birthdays, Rowan. 12 Christmases. His first steps, his first words, moments I can never get back. The weight of those lost years hung between them as Rowan realized her carefully constructed life was about to change forever. "Hello, I'm Mr. Sterling. And this is the story of how one photograph shattered a billionaire's world, revealed a mother's deepest secret, and gave a boy the father he never knew he had." If you love stories where fate brings the past back to life in unexpected ways, make sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The morning had started like any other for Beckett Montgomery. The sleek penthouse office of Phoenix Innovations offered a panoramic view of Seattle's skyline, a daily reminder of everything he'd built from nothing. At 42, Beckett had achieved what most men only dreamed of, a revolutionary tech company valued at billions, global recognition, and the power to shape the future of renewable energy. Yet something was missing. An emptiness that no amount of success could fill. His assistant's voice came through the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Montgomery, the files you requested from the Community Outreach Department are here." "Send them in," he replied, his voice carrying the confident authority that had become his trademark. The assistant placed a folder on his desk and quietly withdrew. Beckett opened it, expecting the usual reports on local STEM programs his company sponsored. Instead, a newspaper clipping slipped out a feature on regional science fair winners. His eyes scanned the article until they landed on a photograph that made his heart stop. A boy of about 11 stood proudly beside a project on sustainable energy solutions. The caption read, "Landon Reed, 6th grade, Monroe Middle School." But it wasn't the name that froze Beckett in place. It was the face, those eyes, that smile, the determined set of the jaw, like looking at his own childhood photos. Beckett's hand trembled as he reached for his phone. "Get me everything you can find on Landon Reed and his family," he instructed his head of security. "And do it discreetly." 3 days later, Beckett sat alone in his office, staring at a DNA test result that confirmed what his heart already knew. Landon Reed was his son. His son with Rowan Carter, now Rowan Reed, the woman he'd walked away from 12 years ago to pursue his ambitions, the woman who had never told him he had a child. With unsteady fingers, he typed an email. "Miss Reed, I believe we need to talk about Landon. I have information that concerns both of you. Beckett Montgomery, CEO, Phoenix Innovations." Miles away, in a modest but comfortable home in the suburbs, Rowan Reed stared at her computer screen, her coffee growing cold beside her keyboard. The email notification had appeared with a name she'd tried to forget for 12 years. Beckett Montgomery. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. How had he found them? And more importantly, what did he want after all this time? Rowan glanced at the framed photo on her desk. Landon at his 11th birthday party last month, his smile wide and carefree, his eyes the exact shade of amber that had once made her heart race when she looked into Beckett's. The resemblance was becoming more pronounced. As Landon grew older, perhaps it was only a matter of time before someone made the connection. With a deep breath, she typed a reply. "Mr. Montgomery, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Landon is my son, and his father is no longer with us. There's nothing to discuss." Her finger hovered over the send button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. The lie felt heavy, even in digital form. Blake had been gone for 3 years now, and though he'd been a wonderful father to Landon, the truth remained. Beckett Montgomery was Landon's biological father, a man who had walked away before even knowing she was pregnant. Deleting her draft, she wrote, instead. Tomorrow 2 p.m., Oakley Cafe on Monroe Street. Come alone. Before she could reconsider, she hit send and closed her laptop. As Rowan prepared dinner that evening, her mind drifted back to 12 years ago. She had been 24, fresh out of graduate school, with a degree in environmental science. Beckett was 29, brilliant and driven, with a fledgling startup focused on renewable energy technology. They had met at an industry conference where she was presenting research. He approached her afterward, impressed by her insights. What began as professional admiration quickly blossomed into something deeper. For 8 months, they were inseparable. Weekends spent in his tiny apartment, dreaming of the future over takeout and cheap wine. Beckett sharing his vision for changing the world through sustainable technology. Rowan believing in him completely. Then came the investment opportunity that would change everything. A major venture capital firm was interested in Phoenix Innovations, but it would mean Beckett relocating to Asia for at least 2 years to develop partnerships. "Come with me," he had said, but his eyes were already distant, focused on the horizon. "What about my research? My career?" she had asked. "You can find work anywhere. This is my one shot, Rowan." The argument escalated, revealing the truth neither wanted to face. His ambition would always come first. "I can't do this right now," he had finally said. "The timing is all wrong. Maybe after the company takes off." She had walked away that night, heart shattered, but dignity intact. 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. She called him, hands shaking, but he was already overseas. The conversation was brief, distracted. "I can't talk now, Rowan. I'm heading into a meeting that could make or break the company. Beckett, I need to tell you something important. Whatever it is, it has to wait. This is everything I've worked for." The line went dead. She tried again the next day, and the next, but his responses grew shorter, more irritated. It became clear there was no room in his life for her, let alone a child. So she stopped trying. 3 months into her pregnancy, she met Blake Reed at a community garden project. Kind, steady Blake, with his warm laugh and patient eyes. He was everything Beckett wasn't: present, attentive, grounded in what truly mattered. When she finally told him about the pregnancy, expecting him to walk away, he surprised her. "I'd like to be there for you, if you'll let me," he had said simply. By the time Landon was born, Blake had become her rock. When he proposed 6 months later, it felt right. He adopted Landon legally, giving him his name and his heart. For 10 beautiful years, they were a family. Blake was the father who attended every school event, who taught Landon to ride a bike, who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Then came the diagnosis: stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Blake fought bravely, but within 8 months, he was gone, leaving Rowan and 11-year-old Landon to rebuild their lives without him. And now, 3 years later, Beckett Montgomery had found them. The Oakley Cafe was busy with the afternoon crowd when Rowan arrived, 15 minutes early. She chose a table in the back corner, positioning herself to see the entrance. Her hands fidgeted with her napkin, twisting it into a tight spiral before smoothing it out again. At precisely 2 p.m., he walked in. 12 years had changed him. The lean, hungry look of the ambitious entrepreneur had been replaced by the confident bearing of success. His shoulders were broader, his jawline sharper, but his eyes, those amber eyes that Landon had inherited, remained the same. Beckett spotted her immediately, as if drawn by some invisible force. As he approached, Rowan steeled herself against the rush of memories, stolen weekends in his tiny apartment, ambitious dreams shared over cheap wine, the devastating conversation that had ended it all. "Rowan," he said simply, his voice deeper than she remembered. "Beckett," she gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit." He did, his movements measured and controlled. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of 12 years stretching between them. "You look well," he finally said. "Let's skip the pleasantries," Rowan replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "How did you find out about Landon?" Beckett reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping. He placed it on the table between them. It was from a local paper, featuring the regional science fair winners. In the center was a photo of Landon, proudly standing beside his project on sustainable energy solutions. One of my employees has a daughter who competed. He brought in the paper, thought I'd be interested in the winning project. Beckett's finger tapped the image. I saw his face, and it was like looking at my own childhood photos. Rowan's throat tightened. That doesn't prove anything. No, but this does. He placed another document on the table, a DNA test result. I had my legal team discreetly obtain a sample. A straw from a fast food restaurant. I know it was unethical, but I had to know. Anger flashed through her. You had no right. Didn't I? His voice remained calm, but his eyes blazed. You had no right to keep my son from me for 12 years, Rowan. The accusation hung between them, sharp and undeniable. You made your choice, she finally said. Your company was more important than us. You said you couldn't be distracted by a relationship. I never knew about him, Beckett countered. If I had. What? You would have suddenly changed your priorities? Become father of the year while working 20-hour days? Rowan shook her head. I made the best decision for my child. Our child, he corrected quietly. The waitress approached, sensing the tension but professionally offering menus. They both ordered coffee, grateful for the momentary interruption. When they were alone again, Beckett leaned forward. I'm not here to disrupt your lives, Rowan, but I want to know my son. He doesn't know about you, she admitted. Blake raised him as his own. As far as Landon is concerned, Blake was his father. Blake, Beckett repeated, a flicker of something jealousy, perhaps crossing his features. Your husband? Yes, we married when Landon was 6 months old. Blake knew everything, and he loved Landon unconditionally. Her voice softened. He passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. Sympathy replaced the hardness in Beckett's expression. I'm sorry for your loss. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Thank you. Rowan, he said gently, I understand your hesitation, but Landon deserves to know the truth, and I want the chance to be in his life. She studied him, searching for the ambitious, single-minded man who had once broken her heart. Instead, she saw someone different, someone who had achieved his dreams, but perhaps discovered their hollowness. It's not that simple, she finally said. Landon is at a vulnerable age. He's still processing the loss of the only father he's ever known. I'm not trying to replace Blake, Beckett assured her. But I'd like to know my son, and for him to know me. We can take it slowly, on your terms. Rowan took a sip of her coffee, buying time to organize her thoughts. What exactly are you proposing? A gradual introduction. Perhaps I could meet him as a friend first, someone interested in his science project. We share that passion, it would be a natural connection. The idea wasn't unreasonable, but doubt lingered. And what happens when your company needs you? When the next big deal or innovation demands your attention? Will you disappear from his life as easily as you did from mine? Pain flashed across Beckett's face. I've changed, Rowan. My priorities have shifted. I've built the company I dreamed of, but it's meaningless without someone to share it with, to leave it to. He paused. I've never stopped thinking about you, wondering what might have been. Don't, she warned. This isn't about us. It's about what's best for Landon. Of course, he agreed quickly. But my question stands. Will you give me a chance to know my son? Rowan looked down at the science fair photo, at Landon's proud smile. He had always been curious about science and technology, interests that now seemed like genetic inheritance rather than coincidence. Could she continue to deny him the chance to know the man who had contributed to half his DNA, who shared his passions and talents? I need time to think, she finally said. And if I agree, we do this my way, slowly and carefully. Relief washed over Beckett's features. Thank you. That's all I'm asking for. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed life was about to change irrevocably. For better or worse, remained to be seen. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected connections and second chances, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these stories of love and redemption. Over the next few weeks, Rowan wrestled with how to introduce Beckett into Landon's life. The solution came unexpectedly when Landon's science teacher announced a career day, seeking professionals in STEM fields to speak to the students. It's perfect, Beckett said when she called him with the idea. Natural, educational, and I can meet him without any pressure. On the morning of career day, Rowan watched Landon rush through breakfast, excited about the speakers coming to his class. "There's a real robotics engineer coming, Mom. And someone from that big energy company, Phoenix something." "Phoenix Innovations," she corrected, her heart racing. "Yes, I heard their CEO might be there." "The CEO?" Landon's eyes widened. "That's so cool. Do you think he'll talk about their new solar technology? I read about it online." Rowan smiled despite her nerves. "I'm sure he'd be happy to discuss it with someone who's actually done their research." Later, sitting in the back of the classroom, Rowan watched as Beckett captivated the students with his presentation. He spoke passionately about renewable energy, making complex concepts accessible without talking down to them. When he opened the floor for questions, Landon's hand shot up immediately. "You mentioned the efficiency limitations of current solar panels. Have you considered incorporating quantum dot technology to overcome the Shockley-Queisser limit?" A murmur ran through the room. Not many sixth graders discussed quantum physics. Beckett's expression registered surprise, followed by unmistakable pride. "That's an excellent question," he replied, his eyes finding Rowan's briefly before returning to Landon. "We actually have a research team working on that very approach. Would you like to hear about our preliminary findings?" Landon nodded eagerly, and for the next few minutes the CEO and the 11-year-old engaged in a discussion that left most of the room, including the teacher, struggling to follow. After the presentations, Beckett approached them in the hallway. "Mrs. Reed," he said formally, extending his hand. "Beckett Montgomery, I was impressed by your son's questions today." Rowan shook his hand, the familiar touch sending an unexpected jolt through her. "Mr. Montgomery, thank you for coming to speak to the class." Landon looked between them, oblivious to the undercurrents. "Your company is doing amazing work, Mr. Montgomery. I've been following your development since your breakthrough with the graphene supercapacitors last year." Beckett's smile was genuine. "Have you really? Most adults don't keep up with energy technology advancements, let alone—" "Landon's not most kids," Rowan interjected, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "I can see that." Beckett hesitated, then continued carefully. "Actually, Phoenix Innovations has a junior science program during summer break. Students get to tour our labs and work on small projects with our researchers. It sounds like you might be a perfect candidate." Landon's face lit up. "Really? Mom, can I apply? Please?" Rowan met Beckett's gaze, recognizing this for what it was, a chance for him to spend time with Landon in a structured, educational environment. It was thoughtful, respecting her concerns while creating an opportunity for connection. "We can certainly look into it," she said, watching hope bloom on both their faces. The summer program became the foundation for Beckett's relationship with Landon. Twice a week, Rowan would drop her son off at Phoenix Innovations, where he thrived under the mentorship program, particularly when the CEO himself made time to check on the students' projects. By August, Landon couldn't stop talking about Mr. Montgomery and his ideas. "He thinks my design could actually work, Mom. He's going to have the engineering team help me build a prototype." Watching her son flourish was bittersweet. Landon had Beckett's analytical mind, his innovative thinking, his determination. These traits that had been emerging for years now had context, and Rowan could no longer deny that keeping them apart had perhaps been a mistake. One evening, as summer drew to a close, Beckett called her. "I'd like to invite you both to dinner this weekend," he said. "At my home. I think it's time we discussed telling him the truth." Rowan's grip tightened on the phone. "Are you sure it's not too soon?" "It's been 3 months, Rowan. He's comfortable with me now, and school starts again soon. This might be the right moment, before his schedule gets busy." She couldn't argue with his logic. "All right, but I should be the one to tell him before we go." The conversation with Landon was both easier and harder than she had anticipated. They sat in their backyard, the setting sun casting long shadows across the grass. "Honey, there's something important I need to tell you about Mr. Montgomery," she began. Landon looked up from the circuit board he was tinkering with. "What about him?" Rowan took a deep breath. "He's your biological father." Landon's hands stilled. "What?" Gently she explained the history, how she and Beckett had been together before Landon was born, how they had separated before she discovered her pregnancy, how Blake had come into their lives and chosen to be his father in every way that mattered. "So, Dad," wasn't really my dad? Landon's voice was small. Blake was your dad in all the ways that count, Rowan said firmly. He loved you from the moment he met you. Being a father is about more than biology. It's about love, commitment, and showing up every day. Landon was quiet for a long time, processing. Does Mr. Montgomery know that he's that we're? Yes. He found out recently, which is why he's been so interested in mentoring you. Is that the only reason he cares about my projects? Hurt flashed across Landon's face. No, Rowan assured him quickly. He's genuinely impressed by your mind, Landon. The connection between you is real. It just has deeper roots than you realized. More questions followed. Why hadn't she told Beckett about the pregnancy? Why hadn't she told Landon the truth sooner? What happened between her and Beckett all those years ago? Rowan answered as honestly as she could, taking responsibility for her choices while trying to help her son understand the complex emotions that had driven them. By the time they finished talking, the stars were out. Landon was subdued but thoughtful. So, the dinner tomorrow. It's not just about my project. No, Rowan admitted. It's about starting to know each other as family, if that's something you want. Landon nodded slowly. I think I'd like to try. Beckett's home was not what Rowan had expected. Rather than the sleek, modern mansion typical of tech billionaires, he lived in a restored craftsman house on a quiet street. It was large and beautifully appointed, but warm and inviting rather than ostentatious. He greeted them at the door himself. No household staff in sight. Welcome, he said, the nervousness in his voice betraying the significance of the moment. I'm glad you both could come. Dinner was surprisingly relaxed. Beckett had prepared the meal himself. Cooking helps me think, he explained, when Rowan raised an eyebrow at the homemade pasta, and the conversation flowed naturally between science, school, and Landon's other interests. Watching them together, Rowan was struck by the similarities that went beyond physical appearance, the way they both gestured when explaining a concept, their shared tendency to furrow their brows when concentrating. After dessert, Beckett led them to his home office, where he had set up a small laboratory space. I thought you might like to see what I'm working on, he told Landon, who immediately gravitated toward the equipment. While Landon explored, Beckett moved to stand beside Rowan. How did he take the news? He asked quietly. Better than I expected, she admitted. He has questions, of course, and he'll need time to fully process everything. I understand. Beckett's gaze followed Landon as he examined a prototype solar cell. I don't expect to replace Blake. I just want the chance to know him, to be part of his life moving forward. I know. Rowan surprised herself by gently touching his arm. Thank you for being patient, for approaching this the right way. Their eyes met, and for a moment the years between them seemed to dissolve. Then Landon called out, asking about the equipment, and the moment passed. If you're finding yourself drawn into this family's journey, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have made the same choices as Rowan? As Beckett? As summer turned to fall, a new routine emerged. Beckett joined them for dinner once a week. He attended Landon's science competitions and soccer games. Gradually, Mr. Montgomery became Beckett, and eventually, tentatively, Dad, though always with the understanding that Blake remained Dad too, his memory honored and preserved. For Rowan, watching this relationship develop stirred complicated emotions. Seeing Landon flourish with Beckett's guidance and resources brought joy, but also twinges of regret for the years lost. And being around Beckett again awakened feelings she had, long-buried feelings that became increasingly difficult to ignore. One evening in late October, after Landon had gone to bed, Beckett lingered in her living room. I've been thinking, he said, turning his coffee mug in his hands. The commute from my place to Landon's school is getting complicated with morning traffic. I've been looking at houses in this neighborhood. Rowan set down her own mug. You're moving? Just to be closer to us? To be closer to Landon, he clarified, though his eyes told a different story. But yes, Phoenix has offices all over the city. I can work from anywhere. The Beckett I knew would never have rearranged his life like this, she observed. The Beckett you knew was a fool, he replied simply. I lost you once because I couldn't see beyond my ambitions. I won't make the same mistake with our son. Our son. The words hung between them, a shared connection that could never be severed. Rowan, he continued, his voice softening. I know we're focused on Landon, as we should be. But I can't help wondering if there might be a chance for us too. Not right away, but someday. Her heart raced. Beckett, you don't need to answer now, he said quickly. Just know that my feelings for you never truly went away. They were buried under work and ambition and regret, but they were always there. After he left, Rowan stood at the window, watching his car disappear down the street. The future she had carefully planned, just her and Landon, preserving Blake's memory while building their new life, was shifting into something unexpected. Something that, despite her hesitations, filled her with a cautious hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. By Christmas, Beckett had indeed moved into the neighborhood, just 3 streets over. His new home was modest by his standards, but still impressive. A 4-bedroom house with a basement he promptly converted into a state-of-the-art lab for Landon's projects. The holiday brought another evolution in their relationship. Beckett joined them for Christmas Eve dinner, bringing thoughtfully chosen gifts for both Rowan and Landon. For his son, a custom-built telescope and an invitation to join him on a trip to the Phoenix Innovations research facility in Hawaii over spring break. For Rowan, a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a phoenix, its wings forming a heart. It reminded me of us, he said quietly as she examined it, rising from the ashes of what was lost. Later, after Landon had gone to bed vibrating with excitement about the telescope, Rowan and Beckett sat before the fire, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over the room. I never thought we'd be here, she admitted. When you walked back into our lives, I was terrified you'd disrupt everything, or worse, disappoint Landon the way you, she trailed off. The way I disappointed you, he finished. I deserve that fear. But Rowan, I need you to know walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. Even before I knew about Landon, I regretted it. Success felt hollow without you to share it with. She studied him in the firelight, this man who was both familiar and new. Why didn't you ever reach out? Pride, fear, the belief that you were better off without me. He shook his head. By the time I realized what I'd lost, I heard you had married. I thought you were happy, and I didn't want to interfere with that. I was happy, Rowan said softly. Blake was a good man, a wonderful father, but what we had was different from, she gestured between them. From this, Beckett moved closer, his hand finding hers. And what is this, exactly? I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'd like to find out. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she'd forgotten existed, familiar, yet new, comfortable, yet thrilling. They agreed to take things slowly, to prioritize Landon's adjustment above all else. But as the new year began, Rowan found herself embracing possibilities she had long since abandoned. Spring brought changes both expected and surprising. Landon thrived under Beckett's mentorship, his science project on renewable energy storage, winning the state competition. The trip to Hawaii was a success, father and son returning with matching tans and a deeper connection. Rowan and Beckett's relationship evolved cautiously but steadily. Weekend outings became family traditions. Movie nights ended, with Landon falling asleep and the two of them talking late into the night, rediscovering each other as the people they had become. In April, on the anniversary of Blake's passing, Beckett surprised them both. He joined them at the cemetery, standing respectfully back as Rowan and Landon placed flowers on the grave. Afterward, he asked Landon's permission to approach. I never had the chance to meet the man who raised you, Beckett said, his voice solemn. But I owe him a debt I can never repay. He gave you what I couldn't at the time, a father's love, guidance, and presence. I want you to know that I don't seek to replace him in your heart. There's room for both of us there. Landon, now 12 and increasingly thoughtful, nodded. Dad Blake used to say that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. You're showing up now. That evening, as they walked along the riverfront near their homes, Beckett took Rowan's hand. I've been thinking about what Landon said today, about showing up. I want you to know that I'm all in, Rowan. Not just for Landon, but for you. For us. What exactly are you saying? She asked, though her heart already knew. I'm saying that I love you. I never stopped. And if you'll give me the chance, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Under a sky painted with sunset colors, Beckett Montgomery, the man who had once chosen ambition over love, knelt before her, offering a second chance at the future they might have had. "Rowan Reed, will you marry me? Not because of Landon, not because of our past, but because I believe our best days are still ahead of us." With tears in her eyes, Rowan gave the answer that her heart had been preparing for months. Yes. Do you believe in second chances? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after what we thought was the end. They married in June, a small ceremony in the garden of their new home, a house they had chosen together, a fresh start that honored the past while embracing the future. Landon stood as Beckett's best man, his face alight with a joy that reflected in both his parents. As they exchanged vows, Rowan thought about the winding path that had led them here, the pain of separation, the years of building separate lives, the unexpected reunion that had changed everything. None of it had been easy. But standing here now, surrounded by love that had endured despite everything, she knew it had been worth it. "Second chances don't come often," Beckett said in his vows. "I promise to cherish ours every day, to be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning." Later, as they danced under strings of lights in the garden, Landon approached with a gift, a framed photo of the three of them from their Hawaii trip, smiling against a backdrop of ocean and sky. Beneath it, he had written, "Family isn't about perfect beginnings, but perfect moments along the way." Beckett pulled his son into their embrace. The three of them together at last, a family forged not just by blood or circumstance, but by choice, by forgiveness, and by love that had found its way home. But their story was just beginning. The real test of their newfound happiness would come from an unexpected direction, challenging everything they thought they knew about family, loyalty, and the power of truth. 6 months after the wedding, as autumn painted the trees in fiery hues, Beckett received a call that would once again alter the course of their lives. His former assistant, a woman named Callie, had passed away suddenly from an aneurysm. In her will, she had left a letter addressed to him, a letter containing a secret she had kept for over a decade. Beckett sat in his home office, the letter trembling in his hands as he read words that seemed impossible. "I never told you about the call. The day Rowan tried to reach you about the pregnancy, I intercepted it, told her you were too busy to talk. I did the same with her subsequent attempts. I thought I was protecting your dream, your vision. I was in love with you, and I convinced myself I was acting in your best interest. I realize now the magnitude of my betrayal. I'm sorry." The papers slipped from his fingers as the truth crashed over him. He hadn't chosen ambition over Rowan and their child. The choice had been made for him by someone he had trusted implicitly. When he showed Rowan the letter that evening, after Landon had gone to bed, her reaction wasn't what he expected. "You didn't know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All these years I thought you had dismissed us so easily." "I would have come back," Beckett said, his voice breaking. "If I had known about Landon, I would have come back immediately." "But would we have been happy?" Rowan asked, the question hanging between them. "You were so driven then, so focused on your goals. And I was young, idealistic. Maybe we needed those years apart to become the people who could truly appreciate each other." Beckett pulled her close, his heart full of gratitude for this woman who could find meaning even in their pain. "I would give anything to have those years back with Landon." "We can't change the past," Rowan said gently. "But we have now. We have the future." That night, as they lay awake processing this revelation, Beckett made a decision. The next morning, he called an emergency board meeting at Phoenix Innovations. "Effective immediately, I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations," he announced to the stunned executives. "I'll remain as chairman, but I'm appointing Jordan Taylor as CEO. It's time for me to focus on what truly matters, my family." The transition wasn't without challenges. For a man who had built his identity around his company, surrendering control was difficult. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, times when the pull of the corporate world tested his resolve. But then there were the other moments, helping Landon with science projects in their home lab, weekend camping trips where technology was banned, family dinners filled with laughter and debate. Slowly, Beckett discovered that the fulfillment he had sought in achievement could be found in these simple connections. Rowan watched this transformation with wonder and pride. The driven entrepreneur was still there. Beckett would always be passionate and ambitious, but now those qualities were balanced by patience, presence, and perspective. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing, watching Landon tinker with a drone, in the yard, Beckett turned to Rowan with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder how different things might have been if Callie hadn't intercepted your calls?" he asked. "If I had known about Landon from the beginning?" Rowan considered the question carefully. "Sometimes. But then I think about Blake and the years he had with Landon. I think about how you needed to become the man you are now, not just successful, but wise enough to value what truly matters." She squeezed his hand. "Maybe this was always our path, just not the one we expected." Beckett nodded, watching his son. "I used to think success was measured in patents and profit margins. Now I know it's measured in moments like this." As Landon entered his teens, new challenges emerged. The initial excitement of discovering his biological father gave way to more complex emotions. Occasional resentment about the past, confusion about his identity, testing boundaries as all teenagers do. One night, after a particularly heated argument about curfew, Landon lashed out. "You don't get to make these rules. You weren't even there for most of my life." The words hung in the air, sharp and painful. Beckett's face paled, but he remained calm. "You're right. I wasn't there, and that's something I'll regret every day of my life. But I'm here now, and part of being here is caring enough to set boundaries." Later, Beckett found Landon in the backyard, sitting on the old tire swing. He sat beside him in silence for a while before speaking. "I understand your anger," he said quietly. "You have every right to it." "I'm not really angry," Landon admitted. "Not all the time. Sometimes I just don't know how to feel. Like, I had this dad who was amazing, who chose me, and now I have you, who's also pretty great, but you didn't choose me back then." "I would have," Beckett said, his voice thick with emotion. "If I had known, I would have chosen you in a heartbeat." "But you didn't know because you were too busy to take Mom's calls," Landon pointed out. Beckett hesitated, then made a decision. "There's something you should know." He explained about Callie's letter, about the calls that never reached him. Landon absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful. "So, it wasn't really your fault?" "The circumstances were complicated," Beckett acknowledged. "But the choices I made before that, prioritizing work over my relationship with your mother, those were my responsibility. I created the situation where someone else could make that decision for me." Landon nodded slowly. "That's actually a really mature way to look at it." Beckett smiled. "I've had some time to think about it." "Do you think Mom would have married Blake if you had known about me?" Landon asked. "I don't know," Beckett answered honestly. "But I do know that Blake was exactly the father you needed then, and I'm grateful to him every day for loving you both when I couldn't." Landon was quiet for a moment. "I miss him sometimes." "Of course you do. He was your dad in all the ways that matter." "But you're my dad too," Landon said, meeting Beckett's eyes. "In different ways, but still important." The simple acknowledgement meant more to Beckett than any business achievement ever had. As Landon navigated high school, his brilliance continued to shine. By 16, he had developed an innovative energy storage solution that caught the attention of major universities. Scholarship offers began arriving, including one from MIT Beckett's alma mater. "I'm not sure I want to go there just because you did," Landon told Beckett one evening as they reviewed the options. "Then don't," Beckett replied simply. "This is your journey, not mine. I'll be proud of you no matter where you choose." The freedom to forge his own path, without the weight of expectations, was perhaps the greatest gift Beckett could offer his son. Rowan watched their relationship evolve with a full heart. The boy who had once known only one father now had the benefit of two, one whose memory taught him about unconditional love and sacrifice, and one whose presence showed him that it's never too late to become the person you're meant to be. Their family expanded in unexpected ways, too. 2 years after their wedding, Rowan discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a surprise. She was 40, Beckett 44, but a welcome one. "A sibling," Landon marveled, placing a hand on his mother's still flat stomach. "That's so cool," I've always wanted one. Are you sure you're okay with this? Rowan asked Beckett privately. Starting over with a baby at our age? His answer was to pull her close, his eyes shining with joy. I missed so much the first time. The chance to do this together. From the beginning, it's more than I ever dared hope for. When their daughter Juniper was born, with Landon proudly serving as one of her middle names, the circle felt complete. Watching Beckett cradle their newborn with a mixture of awe and tenderness, Rowan couldn't help but reflect on the long, winding road that had led them here. She has your eyes, Beckett whispered, tracing a gentle finger along the baby's cheek. And your determination? Rowan laughed, as the infant gripped her father's finger with surprising strength. Landon peered down at his sister with protective pride. She's perfect. I'm going to teach her everything I know. She's lucky to have you, Beckett said, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. The moment was captured in a photograph that would join the others on their mantle, a visual timeline of their unconventional journey to becoming a family. If you're touched by this story of redemption and second chances, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories of love and forgiveness. As Juniper grew from infant to toddler, the contrast between Beckett's experiences as a father couldn't have been more stark. With Landon, he had entered the story midway, trying to build a relationship with a child who already had formed opinions, interests, and a sense of identity. With Juniper, he was present from the first heartbeat, the first smile, the first steps. Yet rather than highlighting what he had missed with Landon, this new experience deepened his appreciation for the young man his son had become. Every milestone Juniper reached reminded Beckett of the countless moments in Landon's life that Blake had witnessed instead of him and strengthened his resolve to make the most of the time they now had together. Landon, now 17 and preparing for college, embraced his role as big brother with enthusiasm. He designed interactive toys for Juniper that were both educational and entertaining. He read to her every night when he was home, creating different voices for each character just as Blake had once done for him. You're amazing with her, Rowan observed one evening, finding Landon patiently showing Juniper how to build a simple circuit that would light up her teddy bear's eyes. I had good examples, he replied, glancing toward the living room where Beckett was reviewing documents for an upcoming board meeting. Both of them. The acknowledgement brought tears to Rowan's eyes. Despite the complicated beginnings, despite the years lost, they had somehow found their way to this, a family bound not just by blood or circumstance, but by choice and love. As Landon's high school graduation approached, he made his college decision, Stanford's engineering program, with a focus on sustainable energy technology. Not MIT like Beckett, not the environmental science path Rowan had taken, but a perfect blend of both their influences, shaped into something uniquely his own. The night before the graduation ceremony, Beckett found Landon in the home lab, working late on a project. Nervous about tomorrow? Beckett asked, leaning against the doorframe. Landon shook his head. Not about graduation, but about leaving, starting something new. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready. You are, Beckett assured him, but it's normal to have doubts. I certainly did at your age. Really? The great Beckett Montgomery? Uncertain? Landon teased. Especially me, Beckett admitted. I was so afraid of failing that I pushed everything else aside, including your mother. It took me years to realize that success means nothing if you don't have people to share it with. Landon was quiet for a moment, considering. I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately, about Blake, he clarified. About what he would think of everything that's happened. What do you think he would say? Beckett asked gently. I think he'd be happy, Landon said slowly. He always told me that love isn't a limited resource that the heart expands to make room for more. He wasn't a jealous person. He sounds like a remarkable man, Beckett said sincerely. He was. Landon looked up, meeting Beckett's gaze directly. But so are you, in different ways. I'm lucky to have had both of you in my life. The graduation ceremony the next day was a celebration not just of Landon's achievements, but of their journey as a family. As Landon crossed the stage to receive his diploma, 3 people cheered the loudest. Rowan, holding 2-year-old Juniper, who clapped enthusiastically without understanding why, and Beckett, whose pride in this young man he had come to know and love was evident in every feature. Later, at the celebration dinner, Beckett raised his glass in a toast. To Landon, whose brilliance is matched only by his compassion. Your future is limitless, and we are so proud to be part of your journey. And to family," Rowan added, her eyes shining with tears of joy, in all its beautiful, complicated forms. "To family," everyone echoed, glasses clinking. As summer unfolded, Landon prepared for his departure to college. Beckett, determined to make the most of these last weeks together, took a complete break from work for the first time in his career. "Are you sure the company won't collapse without you checking in?" Landon teased as they loaded fishing gear into Beckett's SUV for a weekend trip. "If it does, then I didn't build it properly," Beckett replied with a smile. "Besides, Jordan is more than capable. That's the thing about good leadership, knowing when to step back and let others shine." The fishing trip became one of many memory-making adventures that summer. Camping under the stars, a road trip to the Grand Canyon, sailing on Puget Sound, each experience a thread in the tapestry of their relationship, making up for lost time while creating something new and precious. During one of these trips, as they sat by a campfire with the night sky stretching endlessly above them, Landon asked a question that had been on his mind. "Do you ever regret it, the way things happened?" Beckett considered carefully before answering. "I regret the years I missed with you. I regret the pain your mother experienced. But I can't regret where we are now." He gestured to the space between them. "This relationship, our family as it is today, it's shaped by everything that came before, even the difficult parts." Landon nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about studying psychology as a minor. All of this, our family situation, it's made me interested in how people navigate complex relationships, how they heal from the past." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Beckett said. "Your perspective is unique and valuable." When the day finally came to drive Landon to Stanford, the car was packed with not just his belongings, but the accumulated love and wisdom of his unconventional upbringing. Juniper cried at the departure, not fully understanding why her beloved brother was leaving, but sensing the significance of the moment. "I'll video chat every week," Landon promised, kneeling to hug his little sister. "And I'll be home for Thanksgiving before you know it." The goodbye at the dormitory was emotional, but not somber. There was sadness in the separation, but also pride and excitement for this new chapter. "Remember," Rowan said, holding her son close, "home is always here when you need it." "And so are we," Beckett added, embracing Landon with the ease that had developed between them over the past 5 years. For anything, anytime. As they drove away, leaving Landon to begin his independent life, Rowan reached for Beckett's hand across the console. Juniper had fallen asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the emotional day. "We did good," she said softly. "Despite everything, we did good." Beckett squeezed her hand, his eyes momentarily leaving the road to meet hers. "We did. And we'll keep doing good, one day at a time." That evening, after settling Juniper to bed, they found a package Landon had left for them, a framed collage of photographs documenting their journey together. Pictures of Landon with Blake, with Rowan, and more recently with Beckett and Juniper. The final image was of all 4 of them at Landon's graduation, their faces alight with joy. Beneath the collage, Landon had written a message. Family isn't defined by perfect beginnings or traditional paths. It's created through love, forgiveness, and showing up for each other every day. Thank you both for teaching me that the heart is big enough to hold many kinds of love, and that it's never too late for a new chapter to begin. Love always, Landon. Rowan leaned into Beckett's embrace as they stood before this visual testament to their journey. She admitted, "I never imagined how much we would gain. I came looking for my son," Beckett reflected, "but I found so much more: a family, a home, a purpose beyond achievement." He turned to face her fully. "You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve, and I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of it." "We gave each other a second chance," Rowan corrected gently. As they stood in the quiet of their home, surrounded by the evidence of their unconventional but beautiful journey, they understood that the greatest success wasn't measured in wealth or achievements, but in the courage to begin again, to forgive, to love, despite the risk of loss. Their story wasn't perfect. It had begun in heartbreak and misunderstanding. It had weathered absence, grief, and uncertainty. But perhaps that was what made it so powerful. Not the flawlessness of their path, but their determination to keep walking it together, one step at a time, creating something beautiful from the broken pieces of the past. In the years that followed, as Landon flourished at Stanford and eventually founded his own sustainable technology company, as Juniper grew from precocious toddler to confident young girl, as Beckett and Rowan celebrated anniversaries and weathered life's inevitable challenges together, they held fast to the truth they had discovered, that family is not defined by perfect beginnings, but by perfect moments along the way. And in the end, isn't that the greatest love story of all? Not one without flaws or missteps, but one where love finds a way home, no matter how winding the path. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love for more tales of redemption, second chances, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late to rewrite your own story. 5 years after Landon left for college, the Montgomery Reed family had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Juniper, now 7 and bursting with her brother's intelligence and her mother's determination, filled their home with energy and curiosity. Beckett had found his balance as chairman of Phoenix Innovations, guiding the company's vision while maintaining his priority of family first. Rowan had returned to environmental research part-time, leading a team studying climate adaptation strategies. Landon, at 22, was preparing to graduate from Stanford with honors. His innovative energy storage technology had already attracted attention from major investors, including his father's company. But Landon had made it clear he wanted to build something on his own merits, not through family connections. "I'm so proud of him for that," Beckett told Rowan as they prepared for their trip to California for the graduation ceremony. "He could have taken the easy path, but he's determined to forge his own way." "Just like his father," Rowan replied with a knowing smile. "Both of them, actually. Blake was the same way, fiercely independent." The mention of Blake still came naturally in their conversations. Rather than diminishing over time, his memory had been woven into the fabric of their family, honored, respected, and kept alive, especially for Juniper, who knew him only through stories and photographs. The night before they were to leave for Stanford, Beckett received an unexpected call. The caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in years: Taylor Monroe, his former business partner from the early days of Phoenix Innovations. "Taylor," Beckett answered, surprise evident in his voice. "It's been a long time." "Too long," came the reply. "I'm in Seattle for a conference. I heard through the grapevine that your son is graduating from Stanford this weekend. Congratulations." "Thank you," Beckett said cautiously. His relationship with Taylor had ended badly years ago, when Taylor had wanted to take the company in a direction Beckett couldn't support, prioritizing profit over environmental responsibility. "I was hoping we might meet before you head to California," Taylor continued. "There's something important I need to discuss with you. Something about the past." Beckett felt a flicker of unease. "What about the past?" "Not over the phone," Taylor insisted. "Trust me, you'll want to hear this in person." Against his better judgment, Beckett agreed to meet Taylor for breakfast the next morning, before their flight to Stanford. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Rowan asked when he told her about the call. "You haven't spoken to him in 10 years? "Almost 11, Beckett confirmed. "And no, I'm not sure it's a good idea." But he seemed urgent. Said, "It was about the past." "The past has a way of finding us, doesn't it?" Rowan mused, thinking of their own history. The next morning, Beckett arrived at the downtown hotel where Taylor was staying. His former partner was waiting in the restaurant, looking older but still carrying himself with the same confident air that had once made them a formidable business team. "Beckett," Taylor stood, extending his hand. "You look well. Family life agrees with you." "It does," Beckett replied simply, shaking the offered hand before sitting down. "You wanted to talk about something important?" Taylor nodded, taking a sip of his coffee before speaking. "I've been doing some soul-searching lately. Health scare, nothing serious in the end, but it makes a man think about his legacy, about making amends." "Amends for what, exactly?" Beckett asked, his unease growing. Taylor met his gaze directly. "For the role I played in separating you from Rowan all those years ago." Beckett stilled. "What are you talking about?" "Callie wasn't the only one who intercepted Rowan's calls," Taylor admitted. "I encouraged her to do it. I knew if you found out Rowan was pregnant, you'd go back to her, maybe even abandon our Asia expansion. The company needed you focused, not distracted by family obligations. The words hit Beckett like a physical blow. You knew she was trying to tell me about the pregnancy? Taylor had the grace to look ashamed. Callie mentioned it after screening one of the calls. I convinced her it was for the best. That you weren't ready for fatherhood. That it would derail everything we'd worked for. That wasn't your decision to make, Beckett said, his voice dangerously quiet. I know that now, Taylor acknowledged. But back then, all I could see was our chance slipping away. Phoenix was everything to me. I had no family. No real connections outside of work. I couldn't understand what I was asking you to sacrifice. Beckett's mind raced, processing this new betrayal. Not just Callie, but Taylor too, conspiring to keep him from knowing about his own child. Why tell me this now? He finally asked. After all these years. Like I said, health scare. Makes you reevaluate things. Taylor paused, and I saw the article about your son in Tech Innovator magazine last month. His face, he looks just like you did when we started Phoenix. It hit me then, what I'd helped take from you. 12 years of his life. Beckett sat in stunned silence, memories washing over him. The countless times Taylor had encouraged him to focus solely on work, to avoid distractions. The way he'd subtly undermined Beckett's relationship with Rowan before their breakup. It had all been calculated. I understand if you can't forgive me, Taylor said into the silence. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. The truth, Beckett repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. The truth is that you and Callie played God with my life, with Rowan's life, with my son's life. You decided what was best for all of us, without our consent. Yes, Taylor admitted simply, and I've regretted it for years. Beckett stood abruptly. I need to process this. Our flight to Stanford leaves in 3 hours. Beckett, Taylor called as he turned to leave. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found your way back to them. You seem complete now, in a way you never were at Phoenix. Beckett paused, looking back at the man who had once been his closest friend and confidant. The irony is, I'm a better businessman now than I ever was then, because I understand what actually matters. He left without another word, his mind churning with this new revelation. By the time he reached home, Rowan was finishing the packing, Juniper helping by organizing her stuffed animals for the trip. How did it go? Rowan asked, immediately sensing his distress. Not here, he murmured, glancing at Juniper. I'll tell you on the plane. The flight to San Francisco gave them the privacy to talk. While Juniper watched a movie with headphones, Beckett recounted his conversation with Taylor, watching Rowan's expression shift from surprise to anger to a deep sadness. So it wasn't just Callie, she said when he finished. It was a conspiracy. Apparently, Beckett confirmed, still processing the betrayal himself. Taylor saw the company as more important than anything, more important than basic human decency. Rowan was quiet for a moment, looking out at the clouds below them. You know what's strange? I'm angry, furious, actually, but I also feel, I don't know, validated somehow. All these years, part of me still wondered if you would have really come back if you'd known about Landon. Now, I'll never have to wonder. Beckett took her hand. I would have come back in a heartbeat. You have to know that. I do now, she said softly. But it doesn't change what happened. We still live those years apart. Landon still grew up without knowing you. And Blake was still his father, Beckett acknowledged. Maybe that was how it was meant to be. Rowan squeezed his hand. Are you going to tell Landon about this? Beckett considered the question carefully. I think he deserves to know the full truth. But not this weekend. This is his moment to celebrate his achievements. The past can wait a little longer. And the graduation ceremony was everything they had hoped for. Landon, distinguished with honors in engineering, looked every inch the confident young man ready to take on the world. Juniper cheered loudly when her brother's name was called, drawing amused glances from nearby families. Afterward, as they celebrated at a restaurant near campus, Landon shared his plans for the future. I've decided to name my startup Reed Innovations, he announced, to honor both my families. Both? Juniper asked, confused. Landon smiled at his little sister. Reed was Dad's last name, Blake's last name, and it's still Mom's professional name. But Montgomery is part of who I am, too. He looked at Beckett. I thought about using both, but Reed Innovations has a better ring to it. It's perfect, Beckett said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Blake would be proud. So am I, Rowan added, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Later that evening, after Juniper had fallen asleep in the hotel suite, the three adults sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. Landon, perceptive as always, sensed something was weighing on his parents. "What's going on?" he asked directly. "You both seem distracted." Beckett and Rowan exchanged a glance. "We were going to wait until after the celebrations," Rowan began. "But you deserve to know," Beckett continued. He explained about Taylor's visit, about the deliberate interception of Rowan's calls all those years ago. Landon listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When Beckett finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "So it wasn't just circumstance," he finally said. "It was intentional." "Yes," Beckett confirmed. "And I'm so sorry, Landon. If I had known—" "Don't," Landon interrupted gently. "We've been over this. You didn't know, and now we know why." He looked between them. "Does this change anything? For us, I mean?" "It doesn't change the past," Rowan said, "but it helps us understand it better." "The thing is," Landon said slowly, "I've been thinking a lot about determinism versus free will lately, about how much of our lives is choice and how much is circumstance." "And what have you concluded?" Beckett asked, always impressed by his son's philosophical mind. "That maybe it doesn't matter," Landon replied. "Maybe what matters is what we do with the circumstances we're given. You two found your way back to each other despite everything. I got to have two fathers who loved me, in different but equally important ways," he smiled. "And I got a pretty awesome little sister out of the deal too." Rowan reached out to squeeze his hand. "When did you get so wise?" "I had good teachers," he replied simply. The weekend passed in a blur of celebration and family time. As they prepared to return to Seattle, Landon to follow in a few days after tying up loose ends at Stanford, Beckett found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From ambitious young entrepreneur willing to sacrifice love for success, to a man who had learned painfully, belatedly, that true fulfillment came from connection, not achievement. From a father who had missed his son's first 12 years, to one who had been given the precious gift of being present for the formative years that followed. If you're finding meaning in this family's journey of forgiveness and redemption, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch the heart and nourish the soul. Back in Seattle, life resumed its rhythm, but with a new undercurrent of reflection. The revelation about Taylor's role in their separation had reopened old wounds, but also provided a kind of closure. The past couldn't be changed, but it could finally be fully understood. One evening, as Beckett worked in his home office, Juniper appeared in the doorway, clutching a school assignment. "Daddy, can you help me? We have to make a family tree." Beckett set aside his laptop. "Of course, sweetheart. Come here." Juniper climbed onto his lap, spreading out her paper on the desk. "Miss Collins says we need to put all our family members on it, but I'm not sure how to do ours. It's complicated." Beckett smiled at her serious expression. "Yes, it is a bit complicated, isn't it? But that's what makes our family special." Together, they began mapping out their unique family tree. Rowan at the center, connected to both Blake and Beckett. Landon connected to all three. Juniper connected to Rowan and Beckett. As they worked, Juniper asked questions about Blake, about the past, about how their family had come together. Beckett answered as honestly as he could, in terms a 7-year-old could understand. "Sometimes," he explained, "families don't follow the usual path. Sometimes they take detours and unexpected turns, but that doesn't make them any less real or important." Juniper considered this, her small brow furrowed in concentration. "So Blake was Landon's dad, but you're also Landon's dad, and you're my dad, but Blake isn't my dad." "That's right," Beckett confirmed. "Blake was Landon's dad in his heart, and I'm Landon's biological dad, the dad whose DNA he shares." "Like how I have your eyes," Juniper said, understanding dawning. "Exactly like that. But Landon has your eyes too," she pointed out. "So how come Blake was his dad first?" Beckett took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Because when Landon was born, I wasn't there. I didn't know about him." "And your mom met Blake?" who loved them both very much and chose to be Landon's dad. "Why weren't you there?" Juniper asked with a child's directness. "Because I made a mistake," Beckett said simply. "I thought my work was more important than anything else, and I missed out on knowing Landon when he was little, like you are now." Juniper's eyes widened. "That's sad." "It is," Beckett agreed, "but the happy part is that I got a second chance. I found Landon and your mom, and now we're all together." "And you had me," Juniper added brightly. Beckett hugged her close. "Yes, and we had you, our perfect little juniper berry." From the doorway came Rowan's voice. "That's a beautiful family tree." They looked up to see her watching them with a soft smile. She crossed the room to join them, examining their work. "It's not like the other kids will be," Juniper said, suddenly concerned. "No," Rowan agreed. "It's not. It's uniquely ours, and that makes it special." Later, after Juniper was in bed, Rowan found Beckett on the back porch, gazing up at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, settling beside him. "I was just thinking about that family tree," he replied. "About how complicated our story is, and yet how simple it feels now. All the twists and turns led us here, to this moment." "Do you ever regret it?" Rowan asked. "Not the lost years with Landon. I know you regret those, but marrying me, starting over with Juniper at our age?" Beckett turned to her, his expression serious. "Not for a single second. You and our children are the best things that ever happened to me. The only regret I have is that it took me so long to realize what truly matters." Rowan leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I used to be so angry at you," she admitted. "Even after we reconciled, even after we married, there was still this small part of me that couldn't forgive you for not being there when I needed you most." "I know," Beckett said quietly. "But now, knowing what Taylor and Callie did, it changes things. Not the past itself, but how I feel about it." She looked up at him. "I'm not angry anymore, Beckett." "Not at you." He kissed her forehead gently. "I'm still angry at myself sometimes, for being the kind of man who could be manipulated that way, for creating a situation where others could make those decisions for me." "We were both young," Rowan reminded him. "You were ambitious. I was idealistic. We've both grown since then." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Landon called today," Rowan said eventually. "He's meeting with investors next week for Reed Innovations. He sounds excited." "He should be," Beckett replied with pride. "His technology is revolutionary. I offered Phoenix's resources again, but he's determined to do this independently." "Just like his father," Rowan said with a smile. "Both of them." The mention of Blake brought a thoughtful expression to Beckett's face. "I've been thinking about Blake a lot lately. About what kind of man chooses to love another man's child as his own." "A remarkable one," Rowan said softly. "Yes," Beckett agreed. "I wish I could have known him, thanked him for being there when I wasn't." "In a way, you thank him every day," Rowan observed. "By honoring his memory, by being the kind of father he would have wanted for Landon." Beckett nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I hope so." The following week brought news that would once again test their family's resilience. Landon called late one evening, his voice tense with excitement and uncertainty. "Mom, Beckett, I need your advice," he began. "I just had a meeting with a potential investor for Reed Innovations. It's Taylor Monroe." Beckett felt his body go rigid. "Taylor approached you?" "Yes," Landon confirmed. "He said he's been following my work, that he believes in what I'm trying to do. He's offering substantial funding with very favorable terms." Rowan and Beckett exchanged alarmed glances. "Did he mention knowing me?" Beckett asked carefully. "Of course," Landon replied. "He was upfront about your history, about his role in what happened years ago. He said that supporting my company was his way of trying to make amends, though he understood if I wanted nothing to do with him." Silence fell as Beckett processed this information. Taylor, reaching out to Landon directly, offering to fund the very thing Beckett had offered to support, but Landon had declined. The irony wasn't lost on him. "What do you think I should do?" Landon asked when the silence stretched too long. "That's not for us to decide," Rowan said gently. "This is your company, your vision." "But he hurt our family," Landon pointed out. "He's part of the reason we lost those years together." Beckett took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Yes, he is, and I won't pretend I'm not still angry about that. But business decisions and personal feelings are separate things." "Are they?" Landon challenged. You always taught me that integrity matters in business, that who you partner with reflects your values. That's true, Beckett acknowledged. But people can change, can learn from their mistakes. The question is whether you believe Taylor has. I don't know him well enough to judge that, Landon admitted. Then perhaps that's your answer for now, Rowan suggested. Take time to get to know his intentions, his character, before making any commitments. And remember, Beckett added, whatever you decide, we support you. This is your path to forge. After the call ended, Rowan turned to Beckett with concern in her eyes. Do you think Taylor is sincere? Or is this some kind of manipulation? Beckett considered the question seriously. The Taylor I knew was always strategic, always thinking several moves ahead. But he was also capable of genuine remorse. His confession to me seemed sincere. But approaching Landon directly, offering funding when he knows Landon turned down your help. Rowan shook her head. It feels calculated. It does, Beckett agreed. But maybe his motives are complex. Maybe he truly wants to make amends and sees this as his opportunity. What would you do if you were Landon? Rowan asked. Beckett smiled ruefully. If I were Landon's age again, I'd probably take the money and worry about the consequences later. But Landon is wiser than I was. The situation with Taylor remained unresolved for several weeks as Landon conducted his due diligence, researching Taylor's recent business dealings and reputation. Meanwhile, life continued its forward momentum. Juniper started second grade, Rowan's research team received a significant grant, and Beckett focused on Phoenix's transition to more sustainable manufacturing processes. Then came the day that would bring their family's journey full circle. It began with a phone call from Landon. His voice urgent and excited. I need you both to come to my lab today. There's something I have to show you. Can it wait until this evening? Rowan asked. I have a meeting with the grant committee at 3. No, Mom, it really can't, Landon insisted. This is important. Life-changing important. Intrigued and concerned, they rearranged their schedules and drove to the small industrial space Landon had rented for Reed Innovations. They found him pacing the lab, his expression a mixture of anxiety and elation. What's going on? Beckett asked as they entered. Is everything all right? Everything's more than all right, Landon replied. I've had a breakthrough, a major one. He led them to a workbench, where a small device hummed quietly. This is a prototype of my energy storage system, the one I've been working on for years. Rowan looked at it curiously. It's smaller than I expected. That's part of the breakthrough, Landon explained, his words tumbling out rapidly. I've managed to increase the energy density by 300% while reducing the size by half. But that's not the important part. What is? Beckett asked, recognizing the significance of such an advancement but sensing there was more. Landon took a deep breath. Last week, I was reviewing some of Blake's old research papers. Did you know he was working on energy storage solutions before he switched to environmental remediation? Rowan nodded slowly. Yes, it was his original field. He changed focus after we met. Well, I found his notebooks in that box of his things we've kept in the attic. And there, in notes from 15 years ago, was the theoretical framework for exactly what I've been trying to develop. Landon's eyes shone with emotion. Mom, Beckett Blake solved the problem I've been working on. He just never had the technology to implement it. The revelation hung in the air between them, its significance slowly sinking in. So your breakthrough, Beckett began, is based on Blake's work? Landon confirmed. I've built on his foundation, used modern materials and computing power he didn't have access to, but the core concept that's pure Blake Reed. Rowan's hand went to her heart, tears filling her eyes. Oh, Landon. I'm naming the technology the Reed Core, Landon continued. And I want both of you to be there when I unveil it next month at the Sustainable Technology Expo. We wouldn't miss it for anything, Beckett assured him, his own voice thick with emotion. As they drove home later, Rowan was unusually quiet, lost in thought. Finally, she spoke. It's strange, isn't it? How life connects things in ways we could never predict. What do you mean? Beckett asked. Blake's research leading to Landon's breakthrough. Your company's focus on sustainable energy. My environmental work. It's all interconnected, all part of the same larger purpose. She shook her head in wonder. Sometimes I think there's a pattern to it all, even when it seems random and chaotic. Maybe there is, Beckett mused. Or maybe we create the pattern by the choices we make, the connections we forge. Either way, Rowan said, I can't help feeling that this is exactly how things were meant to unfold, that somehow, despite everything, we're exactly where we're supposed to be. The day of the Sustainable Technology Expo arrived with anticipation and nervous energy. Reed Innovations had a modest booth compared to industry giants like Phoenix, but it was strategically located and professionally designed. Landon, dressed in a suit that made him look remarkably like Beckett at the same age, greeted visitors with confidence and passion. Beckett, Rowan, and Juniper arrived early to support him. As they approached the booth, they noticed a familiar figure already engaged in conversation with Landon Taylor Monroe. Should we intervene? Rowan murmured, concern evident in her voice. No, Beckett replied, watching the interaction carefully. Landon can handle himself. As they drew closer, they could hear the conversation. Truly revolutionary, Taylor was saying. The energy density alone would transform the market. My offer still stands, Landon. Full funding, minimal interference. I appreciate that, Mr. Monroe, Landon replied professionally. But as I mentioned in our previous discussions, I'm exploring multiple options. Taylor noticed their approach and straightened, a flicker of discomfort crossing his features. Beckett, Rowan, good to see you both. Taylor, Beckett acknowledged with a nod. I see you're admiring my son's work. It's exceptional, Taylor said sincerely. You must be very proud. We are, Rowan confirmed, placing a protective hand on Juniper's shoulder as the girl regarded Taylor with curious eyes. An awkward silence fell, broken by the announcement that the keynote presentations would begin in 15 minutes. That's my cue to prepare, Landon said, relief evident in his voice. Mom, Beckett, I've reserved front row seats for you and Juniper. As they made their way to the presentation hall, Taylor fell into step beside Beckett. He calls you Beckett, not Dad? He observed quietly. He had a dad, Beckett replied simply. A good one. I'm honored that he considers me family in any capacity. Taylor nodded thoughtfully. You've changed, Beckett. The man I knew would have insisted on the title, on the recognition. The man you knew was incomplete, Beckett said. He hadn't yet learned what truly matters. They parted ways at the entrance to the hall, Taylor moving toward the general seating while Beckett joined Rowan and Juniper in the reserved front row. The lights dimmed, and the presentations began. When Landon took the stage, his presence was commanding, yet approachable. He began by acknowledging the giants of the industry, including Phoenix Innovations, before launching into his presentation on the ReedCore technology. His explanation was clear, compelling, and accessible even to those without technical backgrounds. Then came the moment that brought tears to Rowan's eyes. The theoretical foundation for this technology, Landon said, his voice softening with emotion, comes from the work of Dr. Blake Reed, whose research 15 years ago anticipated solutions we're only now able to implement. As his son, I'm honored to build upon his legacy. A photograph of Blake appeared on the screen behind him, Blake in his lab, smiling at the camera with the same enthusiasm Landon now showed for his work. The ReedCore isn't just named for my biological heritage, Landon continued. It honors the man who raised me, who taught me that science is about improving lives, not just advancing technology. From the corner of his eye, Beckett saw Taylor shift uncomfortably in his seat. The implications were clear had Taylor not interfered. Had Beckett known about Landon from the beginning, Blake might never have become Landon's father. The ripple effects of one decision spanning decades. After the presentation, which received enthusiastic applause and immediate interest from industry representatives, they gathered at Landon's booth. The young inventor was surrounded by potential partners and investors, fielding questions with confidence and clarity. He's amazing, Juniper said proudly, watching her brother. Just like you, Daddy. Beckett smiled down at his daughter. He's better than me. He understood what matters from the beginning. As the day progressed, Landon found a moment to join them away from the crowds. What did you think? He asked, his expression seeking their approval despite his professional success. It was perfect, Rowan assured him, embracing him tightly. Blake would have been so proud. The acknowledgement of his work was a beautiful touch, Beckett added, generous and fitting. Landon nodded, his expression turning serious. I've made a decision about Taylor's investment offer. Oh? Beckett tried to keep his tone neutral. I'm declining it, Landon said firmly. Not out of anger or resentment, but because I don't think our values align. The way he speaks about technology, about success, it's all about market dominance and profit margins. And that's not what Reed Innovations stands for, Rowan guessed. No, Landon confirmed. We're about sustainable solutions that serve people and planet, not just shareholders. He glanced at Beckett. I've learned that from both my fathers. The pride that swelled in Beckett's chest was almost overwhelming. This remarkable young man, with his integrity and vision, was his son. Despite the years lost, despite the manipulations that had separated them, they had found their way to this moment of connection and shared purpose. I have another announcement, Landon continued. I've decided to accept a partnership offer from Phoenix Innovations. Beckett's eyebrows rose in surprise. But you were so determined to build this independently. I was, Landon acknowledged. But this isn't about taking the easy path or relying on family connections. It's about aligning with a company whose values match our own. Phoenix's commitment to sustainability, to ethical business practices, that's what Reed Innovations needs in a partner. Are you sure? Beckett asked, wanting to be certain this wasn't a decision made from obligation or sentiment. Completely, Landon assured him. This is a business decision, made with my head as well as my heart. The fact that it keeps our work in the family is a bonus, not the primary motivation. As they celebrated that evening at a restaurant overlooking the Seattle skyline, Beckett found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. From the ambitious young man who had chosen career over love, to the father and husband who now understood that true success was measured in relationships, not achievements. From the pain of separation to the joy of reconnection. From loss to redemption. Across the table, Rowan caught his eye and smiled, as if reading his thoughts. Beside her, Juniper chatted animatedly with Landon about her school science project, her small face alight with the same passion for discovery that drove her brother and both her parents. This was his legacy, Beckett realized. Not Phoenix Innovations, not his patents or his wealth, but these relationships. This family that had formed against all odds, that had weathered storms of misunderstanding and betrayal to find its way to harbor. Later that night, as Beckett and Rowan prepared for bed, she noticed his pensive mood. What are you thinking about? She asked, sitting beside him on the edge of the mattress. About how close we came to never having this, he admitted. If I hadn't seen that newspaper article with Landon's photo, if you hadn't agreed to meet me that day at the cafe, if you hadn't given me a second chance. But you did see it, Rowan reminded him gently. I did meet you. I did give you that chance. And here we are. Here we are, he echoed, drawing her close. Against all odds. Maybe not against the odds, she suggested. Maybe this was always where we were meant to end up. Maybe all those detours and wrong turns were necessary to bring us here, to make us the people who could truly appreciate what we have. Beckett considered this perspective. Do you really believe that? That everything happens for a reason? I believe that we create meaning from what happens to us, Rowan replied thoughtfully. That we have the power to transform even our most painful experiences into something beautiful. As they settled into bed, Beckett's thoughts turned to the future, to Landon's promising career, to Juniper's bright potential, to the years ahead with Rowan by his side. The path hadn't been straight or easy, but it had led them here, to this moment of contentment and connection. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of their journey, that love, true love, always finds its way home, no matter how winding the path. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Every week, we share stories of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late for a new beginning. Epilogue, 5 years later. The garden was alive with laughter and conversation as family and friends gathered to celebrate Juniper's 12th birthday. Landon, now a successful entrepreneur in his own right, helped his sister set up the telescope he had given her, a more advanced version of the one Beckett had once given him. Reed Innovations had flourished in partnership with Phoenix, the Reed core technology revolutionizing energy storage across multiple industries. Landon had recently been named to Forbes 30 Under 30, though he remained as grounded and thoughtful as ever. Rowan moved among the guests, her hair now streaked with silver that she refused to color, each strand earned through a life fully lived. At 52, she had recently been appointed to lead a major climate resilience initiative, combining her research expertise with practical applications. Beckett, watching from the porch, felt a contentment that still sometimes surprised him. At 54, he had officially stepped back from Phoenix Innovations, remaining as chairman emeritus but focusing primarily on mentoring young entrepreneurs and spending time with his family. The driven businessman still existed within him, but now channeled into more meaningful pursuits. "Penny for your thoughts," came a familiar voice. Rowan joined him on the porch, slipping her hand into his. "Just counting my blessings," Beckett replied, squeezing her hand gently. "Looking at all of this at Juniper and Landon, at you, at the life we've built sometimes, I can hardly believe it's real." "Oh, it's real," Rowan assured him with a smile. "Complete with mortgage payments, teenage mood swings, and that leaky faucet you still haven't fixed." Beckett laughed. The perfect imperfections of real life. Their attention was drawn to the garden where Juniper was now peering through her telescope, Landon patiently explaining the constellations that would become visible as evening approached. At 12, Juniper was showing signs of the woman she would become: intelligent, compassionate, with a quiet determination that reminded Beckett of both Rowan and Blake. "She asked me about Blake again yesterday," Rowan said, following his gaze. "Wanted to know more about what he was like as a scientist, not just as Landon's dad." "What did you tell her?" "That he was brilliant, but humble. That he cared more about solving problems than getting credit for the solutions." Rowan's expression softened with memory. "That in many ways, Landon has become the scientist Blake might have been if he'd had more time." Beckett nodded thoughtfully. "Blake's legacy lives on through both of them, doesn't it? Through Landon's work and through Juniper's curiosity. And through us," Rowan added, "through the way we honor his memory, the way we've incorporated him into our family story rather than erasing him." The doorbell rang, announcing late arrivals to the party. Beckett went to answer it, surprised to find Taylor Monroe standing on the porch, a wrapped gift in his hands. "Taylor," Beckett said, his tone neutral but not unwelcoming. "This is unexpected." "I was in town," Taylor explained, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I remembered it was Juniper's birthday from the Foundation newsletter. I hope it's all right that I stopped by." In the years since the Technology Expo, Taylor had established a foundation supporting STEM education for underprivileged youth. It seemed his health scare had indeed prompted a genuine reevaluation of his priorities. While he and Beckett would never again be close friends, they had reached a cautious détente, bound by their shared history and Taylor's ongoing efforts at redemption. "Of course," Beckett said after a moment's hesitation. "Come in. Juniper will be pleased you remembered." As Taylor joined the celebration, Beckett observed the interactions with interest. Landon was polite but reserved, still maintaining professional boundaries despite Taylor's investment in his foundation. Rowan was gracious, her capacity for forgiveness extending even to the man who had helped keep her child's father from her. Juniper, who knew Taylor only as a family friend and benefactor of her school's science program, accepted his gift, a book on astrophysics, with genuine enthusiasm. "Thank you, Mr. Monroe. This is exactly what I wanted." "You're welcome, Juniper," Taylor replied, clearly touched by her reaction. "Your father mentioned your interest in astronomy." "Both my parents love science," Juniper said proudly, "and my brother is basically a genius." "It runs in the family," Taylor observed, glancing at Beckett with something like respect in his eyes. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to depart, Taylor approached Beckett privately. "You've built something remarkable here," he said, gesturing to the family gathering around them. "Something more valuable than anything we created at Phoenix." "Yes," Beckett agreed simply. "I have." "I envy you that," Taylor admitted. "The foundation does good work, important work, but at the end of the day," he trailed off, looking around at the family photos that lined the walls, the evidence of a life richly lived. "It's not too late, Taylor," Beckett said, surprising himself with the genuine concern in his voice, "to build connections that matter." Taylor nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps not. Thank you for including me today. It means more than you know." After Taylor and the other guests had departed, the family settled in the living room, Juniper excitedly planning where to point her new telescope first. "Saturn's rings should be visible tonight," Landon suggested, pulling up a star chart on his tablet, "and Jupiter's moons." "Can we stay up late enough to see them?" Juniper asked, looking hopefully at her parents. "It is your birthday," Rowan conceded with a smile. "Special occasion rules apply." As darkness fell, they gathered in the backyard. Landon helped Juniper set up the telescope while Beckett and Rowan brought out blankets and hot chocolate. The night was clear, the stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. "Found it," Juniper exclaimed after several minutes of careful adjustment. "Saturn, I can see the rings." They took turns looking through the telescope, each expressing appropriate awe at the sight of the distant planet. As Juniper continued her astronomical explorations, guided by Landon's expertise, Beckett and Rowan settled on a garden bench nearby. "Do you remember our first real date?" Rowan asked suddenly. "Not back when we were young, but after you came back into our lives?" Beckett smiled at the memory. "The planetarium. Landon was at a friend's house for the night, and I suggested we go see the new cosmic exhibition." "You were so nervous," Rowan recalled with affection. "The billionaire CEO fidgeting like a teenager." "I had good reason to be nervous," Beckett defended himself. "I was with the most remarkable woman I'd ever known, getting a second chance I didn't deserve." "And now look at us," Rowan said, leaning against his shoulder, "stargazing with our children in our own backyard." "Full circle," Beckett murmured, wrapping an arm around her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Juniper and Landon share a moment of discovery as they located another celestial body. The sight of their children, together the son he had almost lost, and the daughter he had been blessed to know from her first breath, filled Beckett with profound gratitude. "You know what I think sometimes," Rowan said softly, "that Blake somehow orchestrated all of this, that he's watching over us, pleased with how things turned out." "I wouldn't put it past him," Beckett replied, only half joking. "From everything you've told me about him, he was the kind of man who would want you to be happy, even if it meant accepting me back into your life." "He would have liked you," Rowan said with certainty. "Once he got past the whole abandon me while pregnant thing." Beckett winced. "I deserved that." "Yes, you did," Rowan agreed, but her tone was light. "But you've spent the last 17 years making up for it. I think even Blake would agree you've earned your redemption." The mention of redemption brought Taylor to mind again. "Do you think people can truly change?" Beckett asked. "Fundamentally, I mean." Rowan considered the question seriously. "I think we can evolve, grow, become more fully ourselves. The capacity for change has to be there to begin with. But, yes, I believe people can transform when given the right motivation and opportunity." "Like me," Beckett suggested. "Like you," she confirmed. "Like Taylor, perhaps, in his own way. Like all of us, really. We're all works in progress." Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by Juniper's excited call. "Mom! Dad! Come look at Jupiter! You can see 4 of its moons!" They joined their children at the telescope, taking turns to observe the gas giant and its satellites. As Beckett watched Juniper's face, illuminated by wonder and the soft glow of the porch light, he was struck by how perfectly this moment encapsulated their journey looking outward together, discovering new worlds, yet firmly grounded in the love that bound them to each other. Later that night, after Juniper had finally been persuaded to go to bed and Landon had returned to his own apartment in the city, Beckett found Rowan in their bedroom, looking through an old photo album. "Feeling nostalgic?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Just remembering," she replied, turning the page to reveal photos of Landon as a toddler. Blake, holding him proudly on his shoulders. Thinking about how life weaves its patterns, how the past connects to the present. Beckett studied the images of the man who had raised his son, feeling the familiar mixture of gratitude and regret. "Do you ever wonder what Blake would think of all this? Of us? Of how Landon turned out? Of Juniper?" "I don't have to wonder," Rowan said with quiet certainty. "I know he would be pleased." Blake understood better than anyone that love isn't possessive. He would be happy that Landon has both his fathers in his life, in different ways. That I found joy again, that our family expanded to include you and Juniper. She turned to the back of the album, where newer photos had been added. Landon's college graduation, their wedding, Juniper's birth, family vacations, and celebrations. The visual evidence of their journey together. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a particular photo. It showed Landon at his Technology Expo presentation, the image of Blake projected on the screen behind him, while Beckett watched from the audience, pride evident in his expression. 3 generations of brilliance, connected across time. "I never thought of it that way," Beckett admitted. "But you're right. Blake's ideas, carried forward through Landon, supported by me, it's a kind of continuity none of us could have planned." "That's what family is," Rowan said softly. "Continuity, connection, love that transcends time and circumstance." As they prepared for bed, Beckett found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From ambitious young entrepreneur, to absent father, to the man he was today, husband, father, mentor, still learning and growing at 54. "What are you thinking about?" Rowan asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "About second chances," he replied. "About how fortunate I am to have been given one." "We both were," she reminded him. "I took a chance on you too, remember?" "I remember," he assured her, drawing her close. "Every day, I remember." As they drifted toward sleep, Beckett's thoughts turned to the future, stretching before them Juniper's teenage years, Landon's continuing success, their own evolving relationship. The path ahead would undoubtedly hold challenges and surprises, just as the path behind them had. But they would face it together, strengthened by the journey they had already shared. In the quiet darkness, Beckett whispered a silent thank you to fate, to chance, to whatever forces had aligned to give him this second chance at love and family. To Blake, for being the father his son needed when he couldn't be. To Rowan, for her capacity to forgive and begin again. To Landon and Juniper, for the joy and purpose they brought to his life. And perhaps most importantly, to the man he had once been, the ambitious, driven entrepreneur who had made the greatest mistake of his life for finding his way back to what truly mattered. For in the end, that was the heart of their story. Not the separation or the secrets, not the success or the wealth, but the journey home, to each other, to family, to love. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love for more tales of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. Remember, it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters. As the years continued to unfold, the Montgomery Reed family weathered life's inevitable changes with the resilience they had cultivated together. Juniper blossomed through her teenage years, inheriting her mother's compassion, her father's determination, and her brother's intellectual curiosity. At 16, she developed an environmental monitoring system that combined Landon's energy technology with new applications for climate adaptation, a perfect synthesis of her family's collective expertise. Landon, now in his early 30s, had established Reed Innovations as a leader in sustainable technology. Though he maintained his partnership with Phoenix, he had expanded into new areas, particularly focusing on applications for developing nations. His personal life had evolved too. He had married Maya, a brilliant environmental lawyer he met at a climate conference, and they were expecting their first child. For Beckett and Rowan, now in their late 50s, this impending grandparenthood brought a new dimension to their journey. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing watching the sunset, Beckett broached the subject that had been on his mind. "Landon asked me something interesting yesterday," he said, his fingers lightly tracing patterns on Rowan's hand. "He asked what I wanted the baby to call me." "And what did you say?" Rowan asked, curious. "I told him I needed to think about it." Beckett's expression was contemplative. "It's strange I've been Beckett to Landon all these years, not Dad. But with his child, I have the chance to be Grandpa from the beginning." "Is that what you want?" Rowan asked gently. "I think so," he admitted. "But then I started thinking about Blake again, about what his role would have been if he were still here." Rowan nodded, understanding. "He would have been the baby's grandfather, too." "Exactly, and I don't want to erase that, even in name." Beckett paused, gathering his thoughts. "I was thinking that perhaps the baby could know me as Grandpa Beckett, leaving room for Blake's memory as Grandpa Blake." Rowan's eyes filled with tears. "He's part of our family story," Beckett said simply. "Always will be." When Landon and Maya's daughter Avery was born 3 months later, she entered a world rich with love and legacy. The hospital room filled with family Rowan and Beckett, Juniper, Maya's parents, and even a brief visit from Taylor, who had become something of an honorary uncle to Landon over the years. As Beckett held his granddaughter for the first time, he was struck by the perfect continuity of life. This tiny being connected all of them, past, present, and future, in ways that transcended biology or circumstance. "She has your eyes," Rowan observed, peering over his shoulder at the newborn. "That Montgomery amber." "Poor child," Beckett joked, but his voice was thick with emotion. Later, as they prepared to leave the new family to rest, Landon pulled Beckett aside. "I've been thinking about what we discussed, about what Avery will call you." "And?" Beckett asked, trying not to reveal how much the answer mattered to him. "Grandpa Beckett is perfect," Landon said warmly. "And when she's old enough to understand, we'll tell her about Grandpa Blake too, about how she comes from a family built not just by blood, but by choice and love." The words echoed in Beckett's mind as they drove home that evening. A family built by choice and love. Wasn't that the essence of their journey? The choices, both good and bad, that had led them here. The love that had persisted despite separation, that had found its way back against all odds. As Avery grew from infant to toddler, a new chapter unfolded for their family. Beckett discovered the unique joy of grandparenthood, all the wonder of raising a child, but with the wisdom and patience that came from experience. He and Rowan delighted in spoiling their granddaughter, then returning her to her parents when bedtime battles loomed. On Avery's second birthday, Landon presented a special gift, a family history book he had created, filled with photographs, stories, and memories. It began with separate sections for the Montgomery and Reed families, then merged into their shared story. "I want her to know where she comes from," Landon explained, as they flipped through the pages together. All of it, the complicated, beautiful truth. The book included photographs of Blake that Landon had carefully preserved, alongside newer family pictures. There were pages dedicated to Phoenix innovations and Reed technologies, to Rowan's environmental work, to Juniper's achievements. But most importantly, there were stories of separation and reunion, of second chances and new beginnings, of a family forged through both heartbreak and joy. "This is extraordinary, Landon," Beckett said, deeply moved by the gesture. "A true legacy for Avery." "And for all of us," Landon replied. "I realized while putting it together how unique our story really is. How many twists and turns brought us to where we are now." As the celebration continued around them, Beckett found a quiet moment with Rowan. "Did you ever imagine, back when I first reappeared in your lives, that we would end up here, grandparents, watching our son create his own family?" "Never," Rowan admitted with a smile. "I was too busy trying to protect Landon from potential disappointment, too afraid to hope for anything beyond a civil co-parenting relationship. And now? Now I can't imagine any other path," she said softly. "Even with all its detours and wrong turns, it led us exactly where we were meant to be." That evening, after the party had ended and they had returned home, Beckett received an unexpected email. It was from a young entrepreneur he had been mentoring, a woman whose sustainable housing startup was beginning to gain traction. "I just wanted to thank you," she had written, "not just for the business advice, but for sharing your personal journey. Knowing that someone as successful as you prioritizes family above achievement gives me permission to do the same. You've shown me that it's possible to build something meaningful without sacrificing what matters most." Beckett showed the message to Rowan, his expression thoughtful. "It's strange to think that our story might influence others." "Why strange?" Rowan asked. "Your professional achievements have always inspired people. Why not your personal growth as well?" "Because for so long, I compartmentalized those aspects of my life," Beckett explained. "Business success was public, personal relationships were private. But now I see they're interconnected, that the lessons I've learned as a husband and father have made me a better leader, mentor, and businessman." "Full circle," Rowan observed, echoing words they had shared many times over the years. From the man who sacrificed relationship for success to the man who understands that true success includes relationship. As they prepared for bed that night, Beckett paused by the window, looking out at the star-filled sky. The same stars he had once observed with Juniper on her 12th birthday. The same stars that had witnessed his proposal to Rowan by the riverside years ago. The The same stars that had shone down on Landon's birth when Beckett was absent, focused only on his ambitions. "What are you thinking?" Rowan asked, joining him at the window. "About time," he replied. "About how it gives with one hand and takes with the other. I lost those early years with Landon, but gained these years with you, with Juniper, with Avery. I sometimes wonder what the balance sheet of my life really looks like." "I don't think life works that way," Rowan said gently. "It's not a balance sheet with debits and credits. It's more like a tapestry. Every thread matters, the dark ones as well as the bright ones. Together, they create something beautiful and unique." Beckett smiled, drawing her close. "When did you get so wise?" "I've had a good teacher," she replied, returning his smile. "Life has a way of educating us, if we're willing to learn." As they drifted towards sleep, Beckett reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From ambitious young entrepreneur to absent father to the man he was today, husband, father, grandfather, mentor, still learning and growing as he approached 60. The path hadn't been straight or easy. There had been pain and loss, misunderstanding and betrayal. But there had also been forgiveness and redemption, second chances and new beginnings. And through it all, there had been love sometimes buried or forgotten, sometimes rediscovered, but always present, waiting for them to find their way back to what truly mattered. In the quiet darkness, Beckett whispered a silent thank you to fate, to chance, to whatever forces had aligned to give him this second chance at love and family. To Blake, for being the father his son needed when he couldn't be. To Rowan, for her capacity to forgive and begin again. To Landon and Juniper, for the joy and purpose they brought to his life. To little Avery, for continuing their legacy into the future. And perhaps most importantly, to the man he had once been, the ambitious, driven entrepreneur who had made the greatest mistake of his life for finding his way back to what truly mattered. For in the end, that was the heart of their story. Not the separation or the secrets, not the success or the wealth, but the journey home, to each other, to family, to love. And as Beckett drifted into sleep, Rowan's hand in his, he knew with absolute certainty that this connection, this belonging, was the true measure of a life well lived. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Every week, we share stories of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters, and sometimes, the longest journeys lead us right where we were always meant to be. 10 years later, on a warm summer evening, the extended Montgomery Reed family gathered to celebrate Beckett's 70th birthday. The backyard of the family home had been transformed with strings of lights, tables adorned with flowers, and photographs documenting 7 decades of a remarkable life. Landon, now in his early 40s, and the CEO of a global sustainable technology corporation, stood to offer a toast. Beside him, 12-year-old Avery watched with admiration, while his younger children, 8-year-old twins, Blake and Phoenix, fidgeted in their seats. "I'd like to propose a toast to my father," Landon began, raising his glass. "Not my first father," he clarified with a smile, "though Blake remains forever in our hearts, but to Beckett Montgomery, who taught me that it's never too late to become the person you're meant to be." Across the gathering, eyes turned to Beckett, who sat with Rowan's hand clasped in his. At 70, his hair had turned completely silver, and lines of experience mapped his face. But his amber eyes, the eyes he had passed to Landon, to Juniper, and to Avery, remained bright and alert. "When Beckett came into my life, I was 11 years old," Landon continued. "I already had a father, a wonderful one. I didn't need another. Or so I thought." He paused, emotion briefly overtaking him. "What I discovered was that the heart has an infinite capacity for love. That family isn't defined by conventional boundaries, but by choice and commitment." Juniper, now 28, and recently returned from a research expedition in the Arctic, nodded in agreement. Her work combining environmental science with technological innovation had taken her around the world, but she always returned to this family that had shaped her. "Beckett didn't just change my life by becoming my father," Landon went on. "He changed all our lives by having the courage to admit his mistakes, to seek forgiveness, and to prioritize love over achievement. The empire he built at Phoenix Innovations is impressive, but his true legacy is sitting right here in the connections he's fostered, the relationships he's nurtured, the love he's given and received. Rowan squeezed Beckett's hand, her eyes shining with tears and pride. At 68, she remained as vibrant as ever, her environmental research having evolved into a global education initiative that was changing how young people understood their relationship with the planet. So here's to Beckett, Landon concluded, raising his glass higher. Businessman, innovator, mentor, father, grandfather, husband, and friend. Thank you for showing us that the most important journey is the one that leads us home. To Beckett, the gathering echoed, glasses raised in celebration. As the evening progressed, Beckett found himself in conversation with Avery, his eldest grandchild. At 12, she showed the same intellectual curiosity that had characterized both Landon and Juniper at her age, combined with a compassionate wisdom beyond her years. "Grandpa Beckett," she said thoughtfully, "I've been reading the family history book Dad made when I was little." "Have you now?" Beckett replied, intrigued by what had captured her attention. "Yes, and I have a question." Her expression grew serious. "When you found out about Dad, were you scared?" The directness of the question, so typical of Avery, made Beckett smile. "Terrified," he admitted honestly. "I had missed so much of his life. I was afraid he wouldn't want to know me, that your grandmother wouldn't give me a chance, that I had lost something precious before I even knew I had it." Avery nodded, absorbing this. "But you tried anyway." "I did," Beckett confirmed. "Some things are worth being afraid for." "Like love," Avery suggested. "Exactly like love," Beckett agreed, impressed by her insight. "Love is always a risk, Avery. Opening your heart means making yourself vulnerable. But the alternative, never loving, never connecting, that's not really living at all." "That's what I thought," she said with satisfaction. "I'm writing a paper for school about courage, not physical courage, but emotional courage. I think your story is a good example." Beckett felt a surge of emotion at the thought that his journey with all its mistakes and missteps might offer something valuable to this bright young person. "I'm honored you think so," he said softly. "Though I hope you'll remember that true courage also involves admitting when you're wrong and trying to make amends. Like you did with Dad," Avery noted. "Like I try to do every day," Beckett corrected gently. "The work of being a good person is never finished, Avery. It's a daily choice, a constant practice." Later, as the celebration wound down and family members began to depart, Beckett found himself sitting with Rowan on their familiar porch swing. The summer night was perfect, warm, but not hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden. "Happy birthday, my love," Rowan said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "How does it feel to be 70? "Surprising," Beckett admitted with a chuckle. "In my mind, I'm still that ambitious 30-year-old. With everything to prove." "Thank goodness you're not," Rowan teased. "That version of you was rather exhausting." "And self-centered," Beckett added ruefully. "Don't forget, self-centered." "Ah, but he had potential," Rowan said, her tone softening. "He just needed the right motivation to become the man he was meant to be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as Landon helped his sleepy twins into the car while Maya gathered their belongings. Juniper was deep in conversation with Avery, their heads bent together over something on Juniper's tablet, likely some scientific concept or environmental issue that had captured their shared interest. "Look at them," Beckett said softly. "Our family. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "Very real," Rowan assured him, "complete with disagreements, challenges, and that time the twins decided to improve your home office computer system." Beckett laughed at the memory. "They're definitely Montgomerys. Always trying to make things better, whether they need improvement or not. But with reed hearts," Rowan added, "compassionate, grounded, aware of what truly matters." As the last of their family departed with waves and promises to gather again soon, Beckett and Rowan remained on the porch, reluctant to end this perfect evening. The stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. The same stars that had witnessed their entire journey together. 70 years, Beckett mused. 7 decades of life. If someone had told that ambitious young man what his 70th birthday would look like, surrounded by family he didn't know he would have, Married to the woman he foolishly walked away from. He wouldn't have believed it. And if someone had told that heartbroken young woman raising her son alone that she would one day celebrate her former love's 70th birthday as his wife of nearly 20 years, Rowan shook her head in wonder. Life is full of surprises. The best kind, Beckett agreed, drawing her closer. As they finally made their way inside, Beckett paused in the living room, his attention caught by the wall of family photographs that had grown and evolved over the years. There was Landon as a baby in Blake's arms, Landon at his science fair where Beckett had first seen him, Landon and Beckett working together in the lab. There was Juniper as a newborn, as a curious toddler, as a confident young woman. There were the grandchildren Avery and the twins captured at various ages and stages. And there, in the center, was a photograph taken on their wedding day nearly 20 years ago. Beckett and Rowan, with Landon standing proudly between them, all three faces alight with joy and hope for the future they would build together. Our story, Rowan said softly, coming to stand beside him. Our journey home, Beckett agreed. As they prepared for bed that night, Beckett found himself reflecting on the extraordinary path that had brought them to this point. From the ambitious young man who had chosen career over love, to the father who had missed his son's childhood, to the husband, father, and grandfather he was today, still learning, still growing, still grateful for every day with the family he had almost lost. The path hadn't been straight or easy. There had been pain and loss, misunderstanding and betrayal. But there had also been forgiveness and redemption, second chances and new beginnings. And through it all, there had been love sometimes buried or forgotten, sometimes rediscovered, but always present, waiting for them to find their way back to what truly mattered. In the quiet darkness, with Rowan's steady breathing beside him, Beckett whispered a silent thank you to fate, to chance, to whatever forces had aligned to give him this second chance at love and family. To Blake, for being the father his son needed when he couldn't be. To Rowan, for her capacity to forgive and begin again. To Landon and Juniper, for the joy and purpose they brought to his life. To his grandchildren, for continuing their legacy into the future. And perhaps most importantly, to the man he had once been, the ambitious, driven entrepreneur who had made the greatest mistake of his life for finding his way back to what truly mattered. For in the end, that was the heart of their story. Not the separation or the secrets, not the success or the wealth, but the journey home, to each other, to family, to love. And as Beckett drifted into sleep on his 70th birthday, Rowan's hand in his, as it had been for nearly 2 decades, he knew with absolute certainty that this connection, this belonging was the true measure of a life well lived. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Every week, we share stories of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters, and sometimes, the longest journeys lead us right where we were always meant to be. 5 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Beckett sat alone in his study, surrounded by the accumulated memories of a lifetime. At 75, he had begun the process of organizing his affairs, ensuring that his legacy, both material and emotional, would be properly preserved for future generations. Before him lay a leather-bound journal, its pages still blank and waiting. He had decided, after much consideration, to record his life story in his own words, not as a public memoir, but as a private testament for his family. A way to ensure that the lessons he had learned, often the hard way, would not be lost to time. He picked up his pen and began to write. To my beloved family, I begin this journal on the eve of my 75th year, with a heart full of gratitude for the extraordinary journey that has brought me to this moment. If you are reading these words, it means I have completed my earthly journey, but I want you to know that I departed this life fulfilled in ways I once could not have imagined. My story begins not with success, but with failure, the greatest failure of my life. When I was a young man, ambitious and foolish, I made a choice that would haunt me for decades. I chose ambition over love, achievement over connection, the future over the present. In doing so, I lost precious years with Landon, caused immeasurable pain to Rowan, and set myself on a path that, despite its external success, left me hollow inside. But my story does not end there, and that is the first lesson I wish to impart. It is never too late to change your course. Never too late to acknowledge your mistakes. Never too late to seek forgiveness and begin again. Beckett paused, looking up from the page to gaze out the window at the garden where Rowan was planting bulbs for spring flowers she knew would bloom long after the winter had passed. Such an act of faith and hope to plant for a future season, trusting in the natural cycle of growth and renewal. He returned to his writing. The day I discovered Landon's existence was the day my true education began. I had thought myself accomplished, successful, a man who had achieved his goals. In reality, I was only beginning to understand what truly matters in this life. The journey back to Rowan and into Landon's life was not easy. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if I had lost too much to ever regain. But with each step, I learned something valuable about love, about forgiveness, about the resilience of the human heart. I learned that family is not defined by blood alone, but by choice and commitment. Blake Reed taught me that through his example, a man who chose to love a child, not his own, who gave Landon the foundation I could not provide. I have tried to honor his memory in all my actions since. I learned that success measured in wealth or achievement is hollow without people to share it with. All the innovations, patents, and profits of Phoenix Innovations pale in comparison to the wealth I have found in your love. Rowan, Landon, Juniper, Avery, Blake, Phoenix, and all who may come after. I learned that forgiveness is both a gift and a choice. One that Rowan made when she allowed me back into her life, one that Landon made when he accepted me as his father alongside the memory of Blake, one that I had to make toward myself for the mistakes of my past. A knock at the study door interrupted his writing. "Come in," he called, setting down his pen. Avery entered, now a poised young woman of 17, her amber eyes so like his own, bright with intelligence and purpose. "Grandpa Beckett, do you have a minute? I need your advice." "For you, always," he replied warmly, closing the journal. "What's on your mind?" Avery sat in the chair across from his desk, her expression serious. "I've been accepted to both MIT and Stanford for early admission. I'm trying to decide which to choose." Beckett smiled at the familiar dilemma, his alma mater versus Landon's. "Both excellent schools. What's drawing you to each?" "MIT has the better engineering program for what I want to do with sustainable infrastructure," Avery explained. "But Stanford has stronger connections to international development, which is where I want to apply the technology." "A genuine dilemma," Beckett acknowledged. "What does your heart tell you?" Avery sighed. "That's just it. I'm trying not to decide based on emotion. Dad went to Stanford. You went to MIT. I don't want to choose based on family loyalty." "I appreciate that," Beckett said thoughtfully. "But sometimes our emotions contain wisdom our rational minds haven't yet processed. What feels right to you, setting aside family connections?" Avery was quiet for a moment, considering. "Stanford," she finally admitted. "I can see myself there, not just studying, but growing as a person." "Then I think you have your answer," Beckett said simply. "You're not disappointed I'm not choosing your alma mater?" Avery asked, searching his face. Beckett laughed gently. "Avery, I would be proud of you if you decided to skip college entirely and become a sheep farmer in New Zealand, as long as you were following your authentic path. The schools we attend, the careers we choose, these are just vehicles for our journey, not the journey itself." Relief washed over her features. "That's what I hoped you'd say. Dad said the same thing, but I wanted to be sure." "Your father is a wise man," Beckett observed. "Wiser than I was at his age." "He had good examples," Avery replied with a smile. "Both of them." After Avery left, Beckett returned to his journal, his conversation with his granddaughter having crystallized something important he wanted to include. "To my grandchildren and those who may come after, the greatest freedom I can give you is permission to forge your own path. Your legacy is not to live my life or fulfill my dreams, but to discover your own. The Montgomery Reed heritage is not about specific achievements or fields of study. It is about integrity, compassion, innovation, and love. Use your talents wisely, not just for personal gain, but for the greater good." This is something both the Montgomery and Reed lineages share, a commitment to leaving the world better than we found it, whether through technology, environmental stewardship, or simply by how we treat one another. Remember that no success is worth the sacrifice of your relationships. I learned this lesson too late to witness Landon's first steps. His first words. His early years of discovery and growth. Don't make my mistake. Be present for the moments that matter, for they pass all too quickly and cannot be reclaimed. The sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by familiar footsteps, told Beckett that Rowan had come inside. Moments later, she appeared in the doorway of his study, her gardening glove still on, a smudge of dirt on her cheek that he found utterly endearing. "Writing your memoirs?" she asked with a smile, noticing the journal. "Something like that," he replied. "More of a family legacy document. Thoughts I want to pass on." Rowan crossed the room to stand behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Anything profound to share?" "Just the wisdom of a man who took the long way home," Beckett said, reaching up to cover her hand with his own, "who finally learned what matters most." "And what is that?" she asked softly, though she knew the answer. "This," he said simply. "You, our family, the love we've built together." That evening, their home filled with family for their regular Sunday dinner, a tradition that had evolved over the years but remained sacred. Landon and Maya arrived with the twins, now teenagers with their father's intellect and their mother's social conscience. Juniper came with her partner Kai, an oceanographer she had met during a research expedition. Avery joined them, eager to share her college decision with the entire family. As they gathered around the table, Beckett looked at each beloved face and felt a profound sense of gratitude. From Rowan, still beautiful at 73, her silver hair framing a face lined by laughter and wisdom, to the youngest members of their clan, he saw the living embodiment of his legacy, not in wealth or achievements, but in the connections they shared, the values they embodied, the love that bound them together. "Before we begin," Landon said, raising his glass, "I'd like to propose a toast. To family, in all its beautiful, complicated forms." "To family," they echoed, glasses raised. As the meal progressed, filled with conversation, laughter, and the occasional good-natured debate, Beckett found himself thinking about the journal he had begun that morning. There was so much more he wanted to write, so many lessons and memories to preserve. But looking around the table, he realized that his true legacy was already secure, not in words on a page, but in the lives of these remarkable people who carried his influence, along with Blake's, Rowan's, and countless others, into the future. Later that night, as he and Rowan prepared for bed, she noticed his thoughtful expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, a question that had become familiar over their years together. "About legacy," he replied honestly. "About what we leave behind." Rowan sat beside him on the edge of the bed, taking his hand in hers. "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That the most important parts can't be written down or quantified," Beckett said. "They live in moments like tonight, in Avery's excitement about college, in the twins' debate about renewable energy policy, in Juniper and Kai's plans for their research vessel. In love," Rowan added softly. "Yes," Beckett agreed, "always in love." As they settled into bed, the comfortable routine of nearly 25 years of marriage guiding their movements, Beckett felt a deep sense of peace. The ambitious young man who had once sacrificed love for success could never have imagined this rich, full life awaiting him in his 70s. The father who had missed his son's childhood could never have envisioned the profound connection they would eventually forge, or the extended family that would grow from that reconnection. "Rowan," he said into the darkness, his voice soft but clear. "Yes, my love? Thank you for giving me a second chance, for allowing me to find my way home." She turned toward him, her hand finding his face in the darkness. "Thank you for being worth the wait." In that moment, as in countless moments before, Beckett Montgomery knew with absolute certainty that this connection, this belonging, this love that had endured despite everything, was the true measure of a life well lived. And as he drifted toward sleep, he carried with him the knowledge that whatever the future might hold, his journey had led him exactly where he was meant to be, home, in every sense of the word, surrounded by the love he had once nearly lost, but had been blessed to reclaim. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Every week, we share stories of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters, And sometimes, the longest journeys lead us right where we were always meant to be. 3 years later, on a perfect spring morning, the Montgomery Reed family gathered once more, not in celebration, but in farewell. Becket Montgomery had passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Rowan by his side until the very end. The memorial service was held in the garden of their home, where cherry blossoms drifted like snow against a brilliant blue sky. It wasn't a somber affair, but rather a celebration of a life fully lived, a journey that had encompassed both profound mistakes and extraordinary redemption. Landon, now in his late 40s with distinguished silver at his temples, stood before the gathered family and friends, his father's journal in his hands. In the days following Becket's passing, Rowan had discovered the leather-bound book in his study, completed just weeks before. Inside the cover was a simple instruction: to be shared with my family when I am gone. My father, Landon began, then paused to correct himself with a smile. My second father, Becket Montgomery, left us this journal as his final gift. With my mother's permission, I'd like to share some of his words with you today. He opened the journal to a marked page and began to read. If you are hearing these words, then my journey has come to its end. Please don't mourn me too deeply, for I departed this life having received far more than I deserved: second chances, forgiveness, and a love that transformed me completely. Looking back on my life, I see it divided into 2 distinct chapters, before and after rediscovering Rowan and Landon. In the first chapter, I achieved everything I thought I wanted: success, recognition, wealth, only to discover the hollowness of these accomplishments without someone to share them with. The second chapter began with a photograph, a young boy at a science fair, with my eyes, my smile, my blood. That moment of recognition changed everything, setting me on a path back to what truly mattered, though I didn't fully understand it then. I've often wondered what would have happened if circumstances had been different. If Taylor and Callie hadn't intercepted Rowan's calls, if I had known about Landon from the beginning, would I have been ready to be a father? Would Rowan and I have built a life together from the start? I've come to believe that perhaps things unfolded exactly as they needed to. Landon had the gift of Blake's fatherhood, a man far more prepared than I was to provide the stability and unconditional love a child deserves. Rowan found a partner who valued her above all else during those early years. And I had the time to learn, through the emptiness of success, without connection, what truly matters in this life. By the time our paths crossed again, we were all different people, shaped by our experiences, our losses, our growth. Perhaps we needed to become those people before we could build the family we eventually became. This is not to excuse my choices or diminish the pain they caused. Rather, it is to acknowledge that even our mistakes can lead to something beautiful if we have the courage to learn from them, to seek forgiveness, to begin again with humility and purpose. To Rowan, my beloved wife, the woman who gave me not 1 but 2 chances at love, thank you for your extraordinary capacity for forgiveness, for your wisdom, for your strength. The years we've shared have been the greatest gift of my life. I hope you know that not a day passed when I didn't recognize how fortunate I was to have found my way back to you. To Landon, my son, who accepted me into his life with a grace and maturity beyond his years. You have made me proud in ways I cannot adequately express. Not because of your professional achievements, impressive though they are, but because of the man you've become: thoughtful, compassionate, principled. You carry the best of both your fathers within you, and the world is better for it. To Juniper, my daughter, who has brought such joy and purpose to my life. From your first breath, you have been a miracle to me, a chance to be present from the beginning, to witness every milestone, to be the father I couldn't be for Landon in those early years. Your brilliance, your passion for our planet, your gentle spirit, these are your legacy, and I couldn't be prouder. To my grandchildren, Avery, Blake, and Phoenix, and to those who may come after, remember that your heritage is rich, with both triumph and failure, with mistakes and redemption. Learn from all of it. Know that the Montgomery Reed legacy is not about perfection, but about perseverance. Not about avoiding errors, but about having the courage to correct them. And to all of you, my beloved family, remember that love is always worth the risk, that forgiveness is both a gift and a choice, that it's never too late to become the person you're meant to be. As you gather to say goodbye, Please know that I leave this world with a heart full of gratitude for the journey we've shared. The path wasn't always straight or easy, but it led me home to you, to love, to the life I was always meant to live. And in the end, what more could anyone ask for? Landon closed the journal, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. These were my father's words, his final gift to us. But his true legacy lives on in each of us, in the values he came to embody, in the love he learned to prioritize above all else. Rowan, dignified in her grief, sat surrounded by her children and grandchildren. At 76, she carried herself with the same quiet strength that had sustained her through single motherhood, through Blake's illness and death, through rebuilding a life with Beckett, and now, through this final farewell. After the service, as guests shared memories and celebrated Beckett's life, Avery found her grandmother sitting alone by the koi pond, watching the fish glide beneath the surface. "Are you okay, Grandma?" she asked, sitting beside Rowan on the stone bench. "I am," Rowan replied with a gentle smile. Sad, of course, but also at peace. "Your grandfather and I had 28 beautiful years together, far more than I ever thought possible when he first came back into our lives." "I've been thinking about something Grandpa Beckett told me once," Avery said thoughtfully, "about how love is always a risk, but the alternative, never loving, never connecting, isn't really living at all." "That sounds like him," Rowan agreed. "He learned that lesson the hard way, but once he understood it, he embraced it completely." "I'm applying it to my own life," Avery admitted. "There's this research fellowship in Singapore I've been hesitant to pursue because it would mean a long-distance relationship with Marcus. But Grandpa Beckett's words keep coming back to me about taking risks for what matters." Rowan took her granddaughter's hand. "Your grandfather would tell you to follow your heart and your purpose. The right relationships find a way to weather distance and time." "Like yours did," Avery observed. "Like ours did," Rowan confirmed. "Though I wouldn't necessarily recommend a 12-year separation as a relationship strategy." They shared a laugh, the sound mingling with the gentle splash of the koi and the murmur of conversations from the gathering. "I miss him already," Avery said softly. "So do I," Rowan acknowledged. "But I also feel his presence everywhere in this garden he helped design, in the technologies his company created, in the family he helped build." She squeezed Avery's hand. "And especially in you, with those Montgomery eyes and that determined spirit." As the day progressed and guests gradually departed, the immediate family remained, drawn together in their shared loss and their shared love. They gathered in the living room, surrounded by photographs, documenting their extraordinary journey. Beckett and Rowan's wedding, Juniper's birth, Landon's graduation, the grandchildren's milestones, and countless moments of everyday joy. "I found something else," Rowan said, retrieving a small box from the bookshelf. "Beckett had this made for each of you, with instructions to give them after he was gone." Inside the box were 5 identical compass pendants, crafted in silver with gold accents. Rowan distributed them to Landon, Juniper, Avery, and the twins, keeping one for herself. "There's an inscription," Juniper noted, turning the pendant over. Engraved on the back of each compass were the words, "May you always find your way home." "He designed them himself," Rowan explained, her voice soft with emotion. "He wanted each of you to have a reminder that no matter where life takes you, you always have a home in the family we've built together." As they examined the thoughtful gifts, Landon noticed something else. "The compass points are fixed," he observed. "They don't actually move." "That's intentional," Rowan said with a smile. Beckett said that true north never changes, no matter where we are or how lost we might feel. For him, that true north was love for all of us. That evening, after the family had shared memories, tears, and even laughter, Rowan found herself alone in the bedroom she had shared with Beckett for nearly 3 decades. His absence was palpable, the empty space beside her in bed, his reading glasses still on the nightstand, his robe hanging on the back of the door. Yet, alongside the grief, was a profound sense of gratitude. They had been given a second chance that many never received the opportunity to rebuild what had been broken, to create something even stronger from the fragments of the past. As she prepared for her first night alone, Rowan found a sealed envelope on her pillow, addressed simply, "For Rowan, when I am gone." She recognized Beckett's handwriting immediately. With trembling fingers, She opened it to find a letter written in his distinctive hand. My beloved Rowan, if you're reading this, I have left you alone again, something I swore I would never do. Please forgive me this final departure. Know that if love could have kept me by your side, I would have lived forever. I've been thinking about our journey, about the young man who foolishly walked away from you, about the years we spent apart, about the miracle that brought us back together. Some might call it chance or coincidence that my employee happened to bring that newspaper with Landon's photo to my attention. I prefer to think of it as the universe conspiring to correct a profound mistake. You once asked me if I regretted any of it. The separation, the lost years, the pain we both experienced. The truth is complex. I regret the hurt I caused you. I regret missing Landon's childhood. But I cannot regret the path that ultimately led us back to each other, that made me the man who could truly appreciate the treasure he had once discarded. Perhaps we needed those years apart to become the people who could build the life we eventually shared. Perhaps Blake needed to be Landon's father during those formative years. Perhaps Juniper needed to be born exactly when she was, to become exactly who she is. Perhaps it all unfolded as it was meant to, even the painful parts. What I know with certainty is this: loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Being your husband, parenting our children together, building our family, these gifts have far outweighed any success I achieved in business or innovation. As you face this new chapter without me beside you, remember that my love remains with you always. In the garden we planted together, in the home we shared, in the family we built, in the memories we created. I am there still, loving you, as I have since the moment you gave me a second chance. Until we meet again, my darling. Beckett. Tears flowed freely as Rowan held the letter to her heart, feeling both the acute pain of loss and the enduring comfort of a love that had transcended time, separation, and now even death. Outside her window, the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, the same stars that had witnessed their entire journey together. From young lovers with dreams too big for their small apartment, to strangers living separate lives, to a family reunited against all odds. The same stars that would continue to shine down on the legacy they had created together, their children, their grandchildren, the values they had instilled, the love they had nurtured. As Rowan drifted toward sleep, still clutching Beckett's letter, she carried with her the knowledge that their story, with all its twists and turns, its heartbreak and healing, had been worth every moment. That the long journey home had led them exactly where they were meant to be. And perhaps, she thought as sleep finally claimed her, that was the most beautiful love story of all. Not one without flaws or missteps, but one where love found a way home, no matter how winding the path. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love. Every week, we share stories of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Remember, it's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters, and sometimes, the longest journeys lead us right where we were always meant to be.